Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.
Well, I'm the worst person because of time zones. I thought that this show was supposed to start now, but apparently it was supposed to start an hour ago. And I'm also supposed to be doing Naropa and Raph and Stefan. So I don't know how to deal with time zones, but I think we should make time zones illegal. And also soda pop. You should never drink soda pop the day before you want to sleep all night.
Good afternoon, APM Radio.
Did you get a time distortion yesterday from your birthday, just being too altered, let's say?
Plus, just moving around the world confuses me, and so and you forget between East Coast and West Coast, and if they have daylight savings time and not daylight savings time. But I went to a pizza place, and I mainly ate the salad, but I had 2 sodas. I had Mr. Pibbs and Coca-Cola with a bit of Fanta, as you might, and I drank 2 little ones. And then that was it. That was me awake until 7 a.m. Basically, that was.
Soda pop is a drug distribution system.
I can't handle it. It's crazy, and everyone's like, "Oh man, marijuana is dangerous. Look at how dangerous Chris is there. Martial arts and."
He's not smoking marijuana. He's smoking rose petals.
No, it's straight weed. It's loud.
It's a lot healthier than soda. I'll tell you what. I don't know.
Speaking of time distortion, I watched Interstellar earlier. So maybe time zones, it ain't nothing yet. You got to get into that 5D space, bro, and just access time across all dimensions. Then you can get rid of time zones. It's the only way. It's the only way.
I got a question for you guys. For your birth, when was the last birthday you actually celebrated, for real, with your family and stuff? When did you start just being a degenerate on your birthday?
11.
I don't really think I ever became a degenerate on my birthday. I mean, it was actually the opposite. I stopped being a degenerate on my birthday. That's when people stopped getting it.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same way around. I mean, my parents worked a lot, and so I didn't get ingrained memories of birthdays as super key. But I know people that really do care about their family birthdays, and they focus on doing
witness vibes.
Yeah. Well, this is gonna sound sad, but nowadays the best birthday for me is just me with a bottle of Johnny Walker and all the movies I pirated that I want to watch for the night, and just I don't know, because I'm always around people the rest of the year. It's my birthday is my one excuse to be oh no, sorry man, I'm busy, it's my birthday. And I'm just by myself, because I don't know, sometimes you just, if there's one day out of the year where I could just say fuck you to everyone, that's my day.
I was a 12-hour cesarean or a very long labor or something like that. And a number of my favorite birthdays have been me alone lost in public transportation somewhere around the world, you know, whether I'm like in a bus in Los Angeles missing my
Globetrotter
stop,
problems.
or like like in a swampy underground subway system in Buenos Aires during like the summer humidity at like at ending shift when everyone's going home and the entire place is filled up to the brim like sardines in Japan. I don't know. There's been some okay birthdays like that.
I think it's a good time to take mushrooms.
I was gonna
Birthdays.
say it's time to trip, although I do that regularly enough that it's like a once a weekish kind of thing. But the last birthday I celebrated was 4th grade, seeing Lost World in theater with a bunch of kids, and I got Lost Highway soundtrack gifted to me, which I'd never saw the film at that point, but the soundtrack, if y'all don't know, Smashing Pumpkins, fucking all sorts of stuff is on there. It's dope.
Oh, brother Jim, I forgot to tell you. I never got a chance to, but I remember a while back you gave us all a tarot reading, and that's actually inspired me to learn how to do tarot readings. So I've been like studying up.
That's what's up. I'll have to private message you. I wrote music for all the major arcana this past summer. So I got 22 songs, all very different genres.
You want to pull a card also when you have a second? If you have any cards nearby.
Well, I mean, I like the major arcana because they're like self-explanatory, but then the hard parts are like the minor arcana because that's like a shit ton of cards. So what I do is like I divide it into phases, like 1, 2, 3. Oh, nice.
Yeah, the minor arcana. We don't have to geek out on.
Can you hold up? Can you hold up the Queen of Wands? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a deck. It's the David Bowie, ironically, David Bowie Starman Tarot deck. He was on my podcast a few times. This guy who made it, he used to work with David Bowie. It's a sassy ass bitch. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see this, but she's like Angelina Jolie.
Wait, show close. Oh, hey.
There's a little eclipse, but yeah, this is the fiery part of fire, spunky monkey kind of stuffs.
What's the meaning of the card? Tell me about it.
Just being bold, enthusiastic, taking action.
Also, what does the wands represent?
Fire. Yeah. So if you're a fire sign, if you're an Aries, a Leo, or a Sagittarius, you're naturally a wand. Though we all have all the suits within us. It's this kind of like, weird thing that you are the whole zodiac, you are the whole deck, holographically speaking. But
from what I studied, the wands were supposed to represent like creation, the willful side of like magical creation, which is funny because like the wand is very phallic, parallel to like the chalice, which is more about like
stick.
Yeah. And then there's the chalice, which is about like receiving the intuition, being open-minded, emotionally open. And then there's the sword, which represents like your rationality, logic. And then there's the
sword is also very phallic.
And then, well, the sword is like, I don't know, I guess more of a wedge shape. But then there's the pentacles.
Sword is definitely phallic.
I guess. Compared to the wand, though?
They're both pretty phallic. That's the thing.
Depends how thin you're.
And then there's pentacles. Pentacles is supposed to represent like material, the material stuff. No, that's the chalice. That's
the elements. No.
Yep, all the elements. It's funny that you're saying that about the phallic nature or the non-phallic nature, the receptive nature of the chalice, because isn't the whole trip of the Holy Grail like it's both?
Yeah,
it's a phallic drinkable object, so it's like this mystery kind of high.
The Coca-Cola bottle.
Oh God! Always golden or whatever.
Sorry for the commercial
Grail.
there.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because usually people think of the feminine shape of the Coca-Cola bottle, but it's also phallic. That's interesting.
Well, you even have like parallels in the suit in the suits, right?
Wait, you guys don't have those curves in yours?
I mean, because like the page is like the jack or something. It's kind of like a weak childlike manifestation of each suit. And then there's the queen, which is like the easygoing embodiment of the
highest feminine principle of the suit. So you got like the highest air quality of each suit is the page. The highest water is the queen. The highest earth is the king, typically.
Yeah, and well, the king is supposed to be like the most authoritative representation of the suits. So whereas the queen is like, I don't need to teach about what the sword represents. I am all those qualities without even trying. Whereas the king is like, I'm going to exert my sword will on like my surroundings because I am that authoritative king. And then it transitions into the next suit in like a cycle. So you're supposed to go through all these phases. Like, well, now's the time for the sword. then it's like now's the time for the chalice, or now's the time for creation, like the wand. I guess I look at it more of like an archetypical sense.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, Terrorist, have you heard the phrase in basketball when someone hits a big shot, they go, "He is him," or someone goes, "I am him"? You know?
Yeah.
Which is a play on a boxing, or not a bowling ESPN highlight where
I knew I was about
some
to
guy
ask you about
hits a
that.
strike and he goes, "Who do you think you are? I am."
Who the fuck you think you are? Yeah, I am. Like that
It's
guy.
such a great
Kinda
line,
went
dude.
nuts.
You know what I miss? I miss Send It. Like when kids used
The
to be
best,
like, when like before they did something stupid, they were just like, "Send it." I always love that.
What
I
makes
think
they
that
come and they go,
What?
Who do you
that's
think you
recent
are? I am.
history.
Again, if that had been after a fight, that again, that's like, those are some intense, sharp words. But it was after a bowling match, and it was like some middle-aged white guy who clearly never. He was like trembling when he said it because
You want to hear something funny? Like when it comes to like casual, not casual, but sports like bowling or even like billiards. Like actually, I don't know, maybe not billiards, but like it's you have that pop off moment. You win, you crush them, and then you rub their face in it. But if it's something like martial arts, that's like really bad form. Like you do not do that. Like if you win, you're just like, thanks for letting me win, bro. You know, good
the
match.
funniest ones is darts. The darts guys, like when they pop off, it's really, really funny. Like one of them was like, "Who's in charge, the devil or me?" You know, darts.
Yeah,
fighting, it depends on the fighting. You know, like there's martial arts that are honor based, and then there's martial arts that are military based, and like there's an honor system in the military, of course, but it's not the same as like a philosophical approach that like might actually give you that, hey, don't like taunt and don't, because soldiers do. So
yeah, that's true. I mean,
well,
I
that
don't know,
makes
maybe-
it. And in sports, trash talking, you win 50% of the time if you're good, and so trash
Sun
talking
Tzu.
and kind of calling your shot doesn't mean that you're supposed to feel super ashamed or run and hide if you don't live up to your. The idea is like aim for the stars, and if you miss, you hit the moon. But
yo, we got a question.
The notion that psychological warfare is dishonorable is psychological warfare, man.
Yo,
To disarm you.
Someone in the chat asked if anyone in the panel has been in a fight, and I just want to say I've been in a few, but I've definitely lost more fights than I've won. I'll be the first to admit it. I've gotten my fucking shit rocked more times probably than I can count at this point, because like I was
but
scrawny little.
I mean, if you didn't die, there's the Bob Marley lyric is, "He who fight and run away lives to fight another day." And
I guess. Yeah. I mean, luckily I was just a kid, because when you're a kid getting into scraps, like at the time you feel like it's the scariest fucking thing. But then you look back as an adult and you're like, man, that was nothing. Like, I don't even know why I was scared. But then you're grown up and then you deal with shit. It's like, all right, this is like another level. This is scary. People could actually get killed and stuff.
Have y'all brawled like him? I've only been in one fight with my brother drunk and I got concussed. It was like it's like that. So it's like I wouldn't call that street fighter.
I tend
did
to
you lose consciousness or?
I tend to
yeah,
win fights, even though it's only because other people lose them. Like I win a lot of things because people lose. It's not just fights.
You just have chance on your side, like they trip over themselves and knock themselves out.
A lot. So not just in
Domino.
fights, but even in like in pool or something like that. I played pool about a month ago with some people, and I wasn't in a good mood to win or anything. I wasn't like doing amazing shots, but I won 3 or 4 games in a row because the other players, multiple players, scratched on the black ball, on the 8 ball, and stuff like that. And I feel
Were
like
they drunk?
No, they weren't even drunk. It was just like they're Austrian, you know what I mean? Like they're not meant for
They're bad at angles.
Well, did you guys play Foursquare growing up? It's a game where like whoever's in the lead square gets to make the rules, and it's very, you could do double taps, you can do bubbles, you can do all different types of variations on the rules, and pool is like that. And so there's an elder here in the neighborhood who's actually been on the podcast for a couple hours here with Andreas once, but he said that ever since he was young, he was told that pool was a game that was designed to make people fight. And I didn't really understand what he meant when he said that the first couple times. But when you don't pick the rules in advance, there's like a variation on what's happening when you're going for the white ball. Can you combo? I mean, the 8 ball. Can you combo off the 8 ball? If you scratch going for the 8 ball, do you lose automatically? And what's a scratch? Is it hitting 3 rails? And is it a scratch if you hit someone else's ball first by accident, or if sometimes if you're playing call your shot? But again, no one has these conversations at the beginning of a pool game. The pool halls that get it right have like the rules on the wall, and you like put a tag on the game that you're playing, and so there's no questions. But as soon as you just start playing
pool hall,
as soon as you just start playing that game, pool. Again, snooker is different, but pool specifically, it's like a British humor thing. That was given to America as a gift.
Are you talking about like? Are you talking about like? Well, yeah, I mean, maybe culturally, like historically,
it's literally, but
nowadays,
designed like someone sat down and figured out how to make a game
saying.
that would make people.
I know what you're saying.
I've experienced that with magic cards.
And to your point, I would say that like even if you're playing like a 9-ball rack, there's like so many different rules. Like if it's really supposed to be house rules, like if like you said, if there's rules on the board, then those are the rules you follow. But in a given tournament, for example, like, you know, like if you're dealing with high caliber players and then you rack a 9-ball on the spot, then you're going to be able to pocket the wing ball every single fucking time. And then you're able to just like go for a runoff. And that's why in like very pro level pool, like they put the 9-ball. Well, instead of putting the center ball on the point, they put the 9-ball on the point. So it's like impossible to just get like consistent wing shots like that off the break, which is what they always fucking do. But as far as like, you know, like 9-ball is the more serious game. And I think if you just know like the most rudimentary like fouls to avoid, like for example, like you just gotta hit the lowest number ball before you sink any other ball. You know, you just.
But when you have to wait at the bar to like get through 20 names to get to be your turn, and then you know the table's a few bucks. People 9-ball's a shorter game usually.
That's not a serious place to play pool though. That's not a serious place to play pool. You got to go to a real pool hall if you really.
Yeah, but people put real money on it, and again, they're trying to impress people, not even
not even girls. Like,
am I the one that approaches pool like a chaos magician, where I'm just like, let's see what the fuck happens, as opposed to like
the only people I've ever seen kiss at.
No, you're not the only one.
2 women and 2 men. I've never seen a man and a woman kiss at the local bar.
Well, I seriously like playing pool. Like I play every week. What I like about it. What's up?
You go to pool halls?
Yeah. I've been going to a pool hall every week, and what I like that it wasn't what I thought it was, because like I thought it was about like lining up the shot and then trying to like hit it at the right spot. But there's so many other things to it, like how to shoot it back like a English, or like how to actually visualize the cue ball instead of like just a blank space where you want your cue ball to hit. You place the cue ball visually where you want it to be, and then you just aim for the center of that, and just all sorts of like nuanced things that I just didn't fucking know. But learning about it is really cool. I'm actually gonna get stick soon.
You learn the meta.
Yeah, there is strategy.
You're learning the meta.
It's not just skill.
You know, you give a shit when you buy a custom stick. You're like,
I mean, really, I think really,
you're going to geek.
No. Again, especially in the COVID era, think about how nasty and dirty the house cue is. I mean,
it's to build our immune system.
Yeah, it is. It is. Go ahead. Someone's cutting in and out.
Oh, it's Andreas is breaking up.
He's breaking.
Andreas, you are in between dimensions. You are in between dimensions, Andreas. Wake up.
It's funny when you mentioned rules for pool. The first thing that came to mind was Dumb and Dumber, where they're like double stampies, no races, and they like don't know the rules. They're modifying them as they go.
I mean, but the rules are a big deal because that's how you like outgame your opponents.
What was races?
What's up?
Wait, he said that was a 4-square rule that I heard you talking about. Was it a callback?
No, I was talking about Dumb and Dumber before the 4-square thing. Double stampies, no races. Yeah.
What is that? What is that?
Don't worry about that. Fucking no, but what I think they're playing, like, who knows? In the car, in the shaggin' wagon? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh. The dog grooming van?
Yeah.
Was that a reference to being a grooming gang? For who knows?
Okay. They asked, have we gotten in a fight? Is there a difference between getting assaulted and getting in a fight? Like, let's say someone tries to assault you and you manage to stop them from assaulting you. Is that winning a fight?
And again, there's assault and battery in legal terms and psychological terms. Are we just talking about reality here and how you're?
Yeah. I mean, of course.
And then whether or
not, let's say someone comes up to me. Let's say someone comes up to me and starts a fight with me, and what I do is I manage to subdue them without harming them. Like, is that me winning a fight? Do I have to harm them? No, but I mean, like, of course, there is that sort of. I've developed that over the years. I can talk my way out of any aggressive.
You subdued them, and then you have to let them go at some point, unless you're leaving them hogtied. So then, but even
are you
eventually
just like
fleeing from that? And the question is,
even
that person
even if you just dodge their attacks, until they stop, is that you winning a fight?
Obi-Wan Kenobi technically won that fight, right? You're taking the higher 5D chess game.
No.
That.
You're talking about I'm talking about like literally someone assaults you.
Yeah,
and
you're
then
talking about from like an
instead of getting-
evolutionarily biological standpoint. Elephants, they will charge at each other, and they never actually engage in
Okay, look. Here's my hypothetical.
battle because it's not
actually
advantageous. You understand? It's not advantageous ever, whether you win a fight or lose a fight.
Yeah.
In the wild,
I agree.
As soon as you're injured and you fall off from the herd, you get eaten.
Right. But what I'm talking about specifically, the context is I've been in mosh pits where I push a really, really big guy and he falls over and then he gets mad and he starts trying to attack me with elbows and punches. And then I just push away all his punches and manage to not get hit. And then he just stops because he realizes he can't actually hit me.
I mean, first of all, that's pretty badass. That you
way
questionable that you continue to go back to places like that and fuck that guy anyway. But no, what I would say, like again, in nature, losing a fight doesn't even really come into it because eventually you become old, and then you fall off from the pack. And everything in nature, I learned this when I went to Africa, and they were explaining, no, everything dies in the jaws of another animal that's eating it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how we experience life. And so
is
it's
this when
winning a fight, losing a fight.
Are you talking about when did this happen when you're an adult? Like I haven't been in a fight since I was like fucking 17 years old. So it's like
I took karate as a youngin', and my sensei was very specific about the fact that, you're being taught.
I think
you could kill someone basically.
Yeah,
Even if it wasn't really true. He wasn't teaching us all that fancy stuff, but the mindset, the discipline to as soon as you can run away, you run away.
I just had to. I was stuck in a group home full of like just inner city kids of a certain demographic. I was like the only Asian kid there, and every day it was fucking bullshit. And these kids were huge. Like these were like some men. Like they were like all supposedly like 16, 17. They didn't look 16 or 17. Some of them, like, they were bragging about, like, yeah, I stabbed kids since I was, like, 11 years old because I was, like, born into a set. Could have been bullshit. I don't know. I didn't fucking care. But
no, there are people
that was
the neighborhood condones the violence because, like, if someone's picking on an 11-year-old and it's an adult and they're doing weird shit to them and you, like, kill that person, everyone was like, okay. But then, like, that happens to you 2 or 3 times and then, what gets worked into your nervous system is that it's okay to do things like that.
But if you're an adult, I feel like you could just, like, shoot people who assault you, just get a gun. I mean,
that's what Mike Tyson said.
Just get a fucking gun.
He used to fight people in the streets. Like he used to get road rage and then he would fight people. And then now he's just like, people are scrapped. There's no reason.
But are you shooting them to injure them or maim them? And is it a 22 or a 45? And
I don't think that matters, dude. Yeah, it's just self-defense.
And as soon as you pull out your gun, though, you have to try to kill that person because if you're saying everyone has a gun, then it doesn't matter whether you're aiming at his foot with a 22. He's going to aim at your head.
No, you aim.
Yeah, but it's Mike Tyson coming. If Mike Tyson's coming at you, Mike Tyson doesn't need a gun.
You run away, my friend. Again, you run away.
You're in a car, like you crashed.
And if you don't think you're gonna have the chance again if you're worried about losing consciousness and then them stomping your skull into the pavement, then like it's lights out and your life is over. And so you run away as quickly as possible. And then if you get in a scrap and you have the slightest moment where you make a couple offensive moves. Again, like the sensei's discipline was then, okay, it's now your job to try to flee again. And if you're really not able to flee, then you have my permission to use everything I've taught you to inflict maximum damage on the person that you're fighting with. And when I did Kempo karate and it was non-contact sparring. There's a lot of other types of martial arts that are very high contact sparring.
I was watching a bunch of like martial arts movies recently, and I was realizing I expected martial arts to be a way bigger part of our lives as a kid, right?
They should have been.
Like Cobra Kai is exactly what I thought the real world would be like when I was 6 to 10. I thought that everyone in America would know because in the 80s and like every mall you had jazzercise and karate. I just assumed every American would have to be, every person in the world would have to be like really good at karate by 2025. Obviously,
the thing is, that there's really 2 classes of people: fighters and non-fighters, and they have their own hierarchies and their own value structures within fighting that don't apply to non-fighters. Like a non-fighter doesn't care if they're the biggest, strongest guy in the world, but the fighter will, in the room even. Like there's something psychologically that a lot of fighters go like, and I don't mean like martial artists, I mean fighters, like people who are aggressive and who actually will be like, hey man, like let's fight each other for fun. You know, like let's fight each other to measure each other as opposed to survive.
That's some
Not
base
just
brain
cooking.
amygdala stuff. I don't know. I'm an
No,
There
it's
is.
going
There
one
are
for
people
one.
like that. Like look
What you're
at
referring to-
people like
have you-
look at
have you
people
heard
like
that
Sean
game?
Strickland,
What
for
you're talking
example.
about is matching each other's strength. It's called going 1 for 1. And I had a couple friends that when they would get fucked up, they would go out in the backyard because everyone would say, "Look, you're not doing this in my house." And they would go out back and they would trade 1 for 1. Usually it was neck and below, but sometimes they would go above the neck. You know, just to
Now it's slap fighting. So
It's like
But
mercy.
and then they were best. They would come back in and drink more beer together and smoke more weed together. It wasn't one of these.
you know,
Let me see the
it's.
charts.
I think it's because fighters have a language that non-fighters don't have, and it's the language of the fist. There's literally a dialogue that goes on between fighters that is a measurement of their philosophy and their total application of their lived philosophy. So if you are a martial artist, you know, by measurement of other martial artists, you can be like, wow, your values suck. I can beat you and like actually escape without getting harmed.
I don't
As
think,
opposed
And that's
to
martial arts is about that.
mindset.
I don't think,
Is
yeah,
your,
I don't
what
think
you're
I
doing
ever.
is you're fighting for the glory of your dojo to prove
No.
that your master taught you the best techniques.
I don't think I ever.
Yeah,
did-
that's the philosophy applied to the dojo is the embodiment of that philosophy that the martial
Yeah, but
art
I'm just
is-
saying, I don't think I ever practiced martial arts to like get good at like fighting people. I think the most benefits I've ever gotten from martial arts were always like self-cultivation. You know, it's
that's the application of your philosophy. That's what makes you a better person and a better fighter and a better everything.
The few times that I actually did win, I was fighting really dirty. I would punch people in the throats. I would like kick him in the dick. I would like do all sorts of nasty shit. That's how you fucking win.
Well,
But
what do
as
they
far
teach
as, like,
women?
as
What
far
do
as
they teach
martial
women
arts-
to do if they're being raped?
Yeah, like poke him in the eye, go for vitals.
Yes,
You know,
and
like that's
it's
what you're
not.
supposed
It's not
to
a
do.
poke. No, you're not poking their eye. You're immediately using your fingers as a weapon to try to push them as far into that person's skull as you can to end the fight. Because then they can't see you and you're going to run away.
Sure. If
Yeah.
you
You're not
going
going
to
to have to live having lived with
Sure,
killing someone.
they did train
or getting
women
killed.
to be. They did train
You
women
know-
to be like nasty, violent fighters, and you know, like in the '90s, it was
Yeah.
like stabbing.
Well, for a
you.
time, fighting was people standing in a line with rifles and shooting at another group of people standing in a line.
Yes.
You know, like this is like the honor system that is peculiar to each culture and to each specific. But when you get to another culture that doesn't share the same ideas of honor and discipline and all this stuff, well, you have to adapt to that. You can't just be like, oh, they're using dirty tactics, but we won't because we're going to stand in line and like.
But you were
keep
just
standing
saying
in line
that
for-
the fists are a language, my friend, right? And so
I agree.
the idea is that we're not fighting each other; it's our styles fighting each other, and hopefully we can like learn something and bring it back to headquarters to say when you fight someone from this school. And then the sensei won't take on students if they don't think they will represent their style well. But again, when men in America are teaching women to defend themselves, there's no honor system. There's no honor code, as you're saying, and that's totally removed. And it's about, and when you go look at those seminars, what they teach them to do is to gouge out someone's eyes. Immediately, and that's what you should teach children.
What do you think about what do you Kurt
Well-
just got here, American Time Machine. He has a new album coming out. What do you think as a musician about the art of violence and maybe like femininity is violence? I don't know. Keep going. Yeah, because we're talking about guys fighting and how like men love to fight, you know.
Not necessarily.
Fix your microphone.
Yeah. So one of my favorite pieces of advice. Andreas doesn't give good advice often, but when he gives good advice,
No, I
it's
don't.
really good advice. It's he
wow.
said the nature of femininity is predatory, and so
Kali.
yeah, that's why. You should never be disappointed about being single. It's like it's not because women are bad, not by any means. It's like if you just meditate. Yeah, if you just meditate on that sentence, like female nature is predatory, I think you can learn a lot from it. I've learned a lot from it. I think you can avoid a lot of bad situations in your life if you understand what the force of reproduction actually is. And so yeah, I don't know, it's important to put that in perspective. As far as fighting, I don't know. I think women control men to do all the fighting for them, so that's why most like UFC fighters will be men. You'll get some female fighters in like Is it a separate category? I don't know. Like, is it the WUFC? I don't know. I think it's all under like UFC, just like but like the women's division.
They brought up the point that like boys will go fight in the backyard at parties, like dogs will wrestle in the sand at the beach. You know, boys are into fighting like contact sport,
not
in
to
a
the
sense.
death. It's like
not to the death, and not like into the eye. And we're always like, hey, don't stab them in the eye. Don't hurt their balls. Like we have all these weird rules for fighting, even to the point
like
that
Chris,
war
I think
Chris,
it's more. I was going to say
there's even a saying, it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye, right? Or if somebody puts an eye out.
Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
But wait, Chris, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, personally, I think it's more satisfying to see someone you hate in like indescribable pain than it is to win in an honorable way. Like, I don't think people generally give a fuck about the latter. I think it's usually the former that takes precedence.
Well, you know, you can see with MMA that like the dojo idea with like these were different schools that lived for a very long time, but mixed martial arts was the merging of all these things that is very specific for like the sport world kind of thing, while these old martial arts were mostly fatal and like really, really violent martial arts that worked on people that didn't have mixed martial arts, that didn't have all these systems. So, you know, like all the martial arts that MMA could be were actually, you know, like if you applied the real lethal aspect of those martial arts outside of sport, like they would be very effective in some form. Like especially if you had weapons. Like Chris, you've sparred, right? Like with swords, like fake swords. Well, sorry, not fake swords, but training
they're
swords.
fake swords. Yeah, they hurt, but they're fake. Yeah.
But you know, like take away the fake sword and make it a real sword. When you're in a war, that is no longer anything. Like it's deadly instantly, right? Instant death, like can happen like that. So that becomes the reality of it. It doesn't matter. Like gouging eyes, losing balls, you lose a head, you lose your heart, you get cut in half. Like all these things are possible in war. So that's the reality of it. We have this sort of romantic idea with things like Cobra Kai, with martial arts that they kind of like make it go, oh, you know, like we should all get along and we should not fight each other. Well, yeah, that's survival, of course, but we are living in a very cushy place. And what we teach women is to survive people that are the aggressors, that are the point of having martial arts in the first place, is to defend yourself against people like that. So yeah, gouge out their eyes, cut off their testicles if you have to, because that's what real martial artists would do when faced with death, basically.
But regardless, like I'm still more proud of the fact that I've like avoided any kind of physical altercations like since I was like a kid, because I mean I don't want to go back to that. That shit sucked. Like that really wasn't fun. I really wouldn't want to repeat that.
But if war comes coming,
you can't say that a real martial artist, unless you yourself are coming from a place and because again, the real martial artist knows not to fight unless it's a competition. And then there is a code where you're not trying to kill each. Because even in MMA,
case in point,
everyone could just use elbows.
Yeah,
you know, and they could.
Yeah, but
it's possible.
But what I'm talking about is war,
and make it splatter with your knee.
What I'm talking about is in the context of facing death, though. Like real martial arts between like war.
Well, then it just turns your philosophy of death.
Like a woman getting assaulted, for example, who applies martial arts to survive by gouging out the person's eyes and like whatever they have to survive. Like that right there is real application of martial arts to a point where it's deadly and life risk, you know, like in the context
it marks the person in the community. If the person walks around in the community has two black eyes and someone's saying that guy raped me, you're pretty sure that actually happened, you know?
Yeah. But that's the thing. What I'm talking about is the martial part in martial law.
Men get raped too.
Yeah.
The idea that when you say like, because we're a bunch of guys here on stream, and you know it's like, okay, women can use this technique because it's justified, but in reality, all that did was cut out all the bullshit about the morals and the discipline and the dogma and what's right or wrong, and it's just about defending yourself as quickly as possible, as effectively as possible, and then running away.
Yeah. I agree.
So the Diddy freak
Totally,
off
totally.
parties, there's like martial arts kind of being used.
Well, most of the martial artists are there and are being used by the security guards and the bouncers that make sure no one leaves. So it's
what they know how to do is
misapplication of martial
they
arts.
choke people out gently,
people trying
and then
to
they
avoid
control the
paying for
situation.
Yeah.
You have to
What
control
was
the
Jim trying to
situation.
say about how this affects your idea of death?
Well, no,
Sorry,
it's like,
Andrew.
look, you got different cultures and I mean, there's no one right answer. Some cultures like, we're in a dream, die honorably. Like samurai didn't just bust out their swords and chop off heads every day. They were like, we'll enforce the rules against the crooked elements of society. Vikings were like, I want to go to Valhalla. Let's do this full on. Or,
But the samurai, it depended on who was leading them. Like they served the emperor.
Right. Their presuppositions colored their script. So
It's the dying on your feet versus living on your knees. And like I said, in the rest of nature, if you're just observing the rest of nature and you don't think humanity's separate from it, no, right. It's like as soon as you're getting attacked, you're either fast enough to get away and rejoin the herd that are peaceful and breeding, or you succumb to the jaws of a predator that's usually a solo or a pack hunter, and then scavengers pick through the remains of your bones long after you've had. It didn't even matter whether you fought back or how you fought back or what tactics you used. Sometimes, again, if a hyena attacks a jaguar, they're both going to die because they're both going to get infections from the wounds they give each other.
But usually they're not doing it from a bloodlust place.
All they got to do is get
a dominance hierarchy thing, right? Typically in nature, it's like, hey, I'm either going to try to peck order up or, keep my place. So like if a bear is like, fuck you, I want to be the alpha bear. They probably, and that's the whole point of like a dog's bark is worse than its bite. It's like they're not trying to kill each other.
It's interesting. In Africa, there's no bears. There are wild dogs, but they have a whole different set of animals. And what you're saying is the hierarchical thing is a very American, perhaps Western way of viewing things. And in Africa, it is just different. What they say when they're looking out at the fields of
be a lion. I mean,
you've seen The Lion King. The whole point of Scar and the Hamlet redo is like.
It's an American movie.
And I know that's a Jordan Petersonian.
No, you're right. But the thing, it is an ecosystem that is completely dependent. So the idea of hierarchy, one on top of the other, but we can observe that lions will eat things that eat grass, for example, and then we can go like
Africa, like Ghost in the Darkness, that film with Val Kilmer. They were like bloodlusting lions, but it's a rarity, not a normality.
Like the concept of an apex predator is basically the thing that's the most dangerous in the ecosystem. And so that right there creates a hierarchy just by going like there is this one thing that is more violent and more dangerous than other things. Like a hippo, like they go like the hippo is the most deadly. They literally say it. And
but same with the octopus.
Africa.
It's a gardener. In the lion or the big predator cats that hang out at the watering hole, they sit there in a low profile. And they get all the animals comfortable coming and going to the watering hole. And they're actually kind of directing traffic. And then when they're hungry, they find the one that's weakest and safest to attack. Usually it's an infant or a small one. And that's the one they take.
Yeah.
Whether it's injured or it's the one that's left behind or straggling or lost or and then anyone that actually engages in a conflict, their genes don't tend to perpetuate.
Well, I agree with the hierarchy thing because, all of these creatures, even the strongest, even the most deadly, is prone to disease, to molecular things that are like really beyond their capacity to have any control over. So yeah, there is no real hierarchy in nature, but there is a sort of deadliness to humans ratio that's where we gauge things,
I'm surprised you said that there's no hierarchy in nature. It seems all it is hierarchies.
Well, the thing is, hierarchies are structures that we create in our minds and then we project on nature. In nature, the concepts don't exist. Those are in our minds, right? So it's just nature is an ecosystem of multiplicity that is all on top of each other and below each other, like germs. I don't want
to debate this too hard, but look at old Pride of Lions. There's an alpha lion and he has a
No, I totally understand. I get it. And like I said, we as humans, we can observe it and then make the classification system. But in nature, like the lion will still die to things that are below it on the, let's say, the scale of nature.
So there's social hierarchy, and then there's the hierarchy of power in life. Yeah. And, you have to draw a distinction because I think
confusion
is you're conflating two different things.
Sure,
Well,
sure.
if humans never existed, Lion King
clearly a
could still
hierarchy.
stand on its own as a story.
I agree. I mean, it's just that the hierarchy is more complex than what we really ascribe it to be, is I guess the point. Like there is hierarchy, but it's also more nuanced than just the Lion King, for example.
See, humans love being told what to do, though. We are rule followers at our core.
When you're the biggest,
sorry, Andreas.
When you're the biggest and the strongest, you still have only when you're the biggest and the strongest, you only have a peak period of life where you're the strongest you can be. So then something younger comes through, and that's like Beowulf. You never end up living happily ever after in nature, right? Nature is all about something. It's all about hierarchy. It's like something becomes better and dominates something else, and it might be dominating in different ways. Yeah. So it's like, okay, yeah, it might not just be like a younger lion. It might be like a million mosquitoes beat a lot, the pride of lions or something.
I really wonder if, like, at some point in history, our ancestors were facing creatures that are like remnants of more ancient bloodlines that were greater in scale, greater in size, like monstrous versions of like saber-toothed tigers, for example. Like,
how about bigger versions of humans?
Giants, of course. Because at some point in history, there were creatures that are bigger than what they are now. Like there were giant apes that were
like
big.
Speaking of survival,
we killed the rhinos.
What kind of minor injuries can you guys treat? I think if we all put our skills together, we could make like a full doctor.
Captain Planet Apothecary.
Yeah,
I can pee on your.
It's called being a bush doctor. That you guys know that phrase.
Do you know how to set a broken bone?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but can you set it and heal it with mud? That's a bush doctor doesn't need concrete and or plaster. That's the theory. And it's like a bush mechanic. He doesn't need a wrench necessarily. He'll figure it out. And
I learned that one from Bob Marley's son, actually.
As derogative terms. Bob Marley's son is what? Ziggy, no, it was Damien. Yeah. Can you heal a broken bone in a bush with a wet mud? Is what he said.
Yeah. I love that song. It's such a good song.
They say weed affects your memory, though.
All right. Someone has to handle the cuts and bruises. Someone does the diarrhea. Someone does the food poisoning.
I'll go for help.
I'm going to burn all your wounds closed to sterilize them.
You could help with the erectile dysfunction.
Me?
Yeah,
I guess. I'll find you the nearest mounds that are looking like boobs, and you can go look at them.
Yeah, for sure.
When I was in Switzerland, they had this weed goo. It was like black goo, and they weren't allowed to sell THC products there. But when I used that, again, it's a vasodilator, and the hrum was strong. Let's put it that way. Like 4 hours later, I'm like,
honestly, I tell everyone to do squats and work out a lot. Basically,
it's about circulation. Yeah.
What I tell people, do work on your cardio.
What can I heal? I think I'm only good to heal. I'm a good healer for spiritual wounds. If you have depression, suicidal thoughts, I will heal. I will heal your soul.
Kumbaya,
I'll make you a sigil.
Yeah,
Doesn't healing and comforting like weaken and domesticate humanity? And isn't maybe that the reason that we encourage, like dogs encourage younger dogs to fight, to play, and maybe humans are supposed to be fighting in order to stay strong and not become fully weakened and domesticated, like, from wolves to puppies?
But this is where I have to point out. This is tying back into what I said about martial arts schools competing to who's got the best, most deadliest, most deep, not only techniques, but then but in yoga is technically a martial art. If you look that up, because you're preparing for battle, but you're not practicing any offensive moves. You're practicing being strong enough to withstand damage and then run away.
And breathing.
And then rejoin the herd with safety, in theory.
I'll be there to heal your wounds. I want to be. I'm entering my healer arc, guys. I'm done with the warrior path.
Finally,
I never had it. I'm just a healer. I've always been a healer.
No, I disagree. I think
healers are part of the warrior. Healer's part of the warrior path, right? Every
Chris,
battle,
you should watch
the guy yelling medic.
You should watch the Kenshin show on Netflix.
Yo, that show that was created by a pedophile.
Yeah, that's fucked up, isn't it? It's about historical era early 1900. Man, I was so disappointed when I heard that shit.
Well, you're talking about the Quran. Was that written by Muhammad? Sorry, bad joke.
No, Nobuhiro Watsuki, I think.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's
ingrained in my head.
I mean,
did I say that out loud? Shit.
To give credit to what Andreas was saying, you do kind of, I mean, I think like archetypically the healer has to be wounded first, right? Like that's where the healer comes from, the wounded sage. Just like, I know this pain because I fucking dealt with this pain, so I know how to like help you through it.
I think there's different types of healers, though. There's people who have innate healing sort of qualities, and then there's people who develop them over time. And that comes from experience and knowing how to treat the damage you've been inflicted, while other people are just more like inclined towards learning about these things and being a healer, really. Some of them having like an energetic touch that is.
Have you guys heard of inner child work before?
Yeah.
I cast antibiotics on you.
Well, no, there was a guy that I've been following on YouTube. He's one of the first comedians to go straight from YouTube to selling out entire arenas, and he does stand-up tours now at small bars as well. But JP Sears, and he wrote a book called 12 and a Half Steps to Spiritual Enlightenment or something like that.
Redhead guy
to become ultra spiritual. Yeah. And so his thing is, and he doesn't talk about this really in any of his videos or his comedy, but I went to an event at Cosm, which is Alex Gray's and his wife's Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. And they were giving a little presentation, and he was explaining, or he was like, a magician. It's like, oh, pick someone in the audience, tell them to pick a card. We're all standing, holding hands, doing a breathing exercise. And all of a sudden he says, I feel like someone in this room needs to talk to a version of their 6-year-old self. And it's easy to induce it, and you can mimic it. And then you can like see if you, at the next party you're at, you can get everyone to hold hands and make somebody freak the fuck out and have a full-on emotional breakdown and conniption, and potentially have a permanent psychotic break or a prolonged one. And so at JP Sears, he said, I did that on purpose here because I'm confident in my skills to know that I can help someone manage the experience that they have when their 12-year-old self is forgiving their 8-year-old self for letting their uncle molest them for 4 years without saying anything to another adult. And when you get that person in that mindset and they're actually forgiving themselves, and then they're opening up all these other emotional reservoirs that have laid dormant, and then again, if that person doesn't then receive kind of follow-up care, they might not be better off for the experience. And so it's not a parlor trick. It's not something really to be taken lightly. And again, I appreciate you guys letting me share that story.
Yeah, well, I kind of had that experience with psychedelics, like that sort of initiation and going through that process of forgiving your childhood self as well as the people who damaged you and letting it go. It's forgiveness because I think that the problem is we wish that they were better people that didn't do that, right? So that was part of it that made me forgive them. It's like I knew that beyond their horrible physical side, they had something that was divine that needed to be accessed.
Yeah, and that's where the God thing comes in. No, not everyone. No, there are some people that are just fucking pieces of shit.
Sure, some people are maybe just demons.
Most of the time they're not, but every now and then they go out.
I agree. And
and disgusting, and those people.
Yeah.
They don't deserve forgiveness. They.
I agree. Those are demons. And that's a different class. There's a different class. What I'm talking about. I guess it was my experience.
But what you're saying is that you're letting it go, so that you're not carrying anger with you, because that doesn't serve you. But so forgiving. There's the idea of turning the other cheek. But then, do you extend your hand for a handshake or in friendship ever again? No.
I mean, look, it depends on the type of trauma. Of course, when it comes to sexual abuse or these sort of things, then that's a whole other level, and that can't be undone with the handshake. There is no handshaking there. This is more like you have to let go of whatever hand was being held when you were a child that is toxic. That was the
sometimes
problem.
If you directly catch someone in your house doing something to someone you love that's horrific, you're gonna feel better when you're sitting on top of about 6 feet of dirt and they're underneath it, and then you go, okay, I can forgive that person now.
But I think the point though,
radicalized by 30-second videos on the internet, and we become mind control victims and hypnotic reactionaries. And people will develop the same thing. There's no such thing as a good Jew but a dead Jew, and I think
the point though, the point is that you have to let go of the traumatizer's hold over you. Like the person who harmed you so deeply has power over you as long as the trauma is still influencing your mood and your behavior and all these things. And so letting go of that person's hold over you and transmuting all that suffering into something positive, into something creative, as opposed to lamenting your fate and holding on to that suffering as a form of your identity. Like, you can let that go eventually. And that is letting go of trauma. That is the goal of shamanism, in my opinion.
Yo,
but that's like step 5 or 6. What up?
Yeah. We're way ahead over here. You know, like this is years into this, maybe
Right.
10
And
years.
people
Oh my
need to
God,
be
you
able to
shaved.
forgive
How you
themselves
doing,
without
Andrew?
forgiving other people first, maybe.
Oh, you know,
You're
another
hopping
day in
into a hot
paradise.
part of a conversation.
You can't
Yeah,
rush the healing.
Are we
This is
talking about
giving you the future. Do
generational
it, do it.
trauma and diamonds?
All right,
Okay.
Cook, go for
Shine
it.
bright like a diamond.
I mean, you know, it's I never think that anyone's trauma is a license to abuse other people. I do understand the systemic nature of trauma and how it can become cyclical, and you know, transgenerational or whatever. But I mean, again, it's not an excuse. Bad things happening to you is not an excuse to like be shitty to other people. Point blank. Period.
It becomes
But if
their
you could
excuse.
choose a universe with no suffering, even if it's just for yourself, would that even be an interesting universe
Yo,
to live in?
I just
But-
want to say, Andrew.
Yeah, dynamics make experience beautiful, right?
Yo,
And
Andrew.
when you go ahead. Yeah.
When you got your motorcycle stolen and you said you walked out with a Glock, I would have forgiven you for shooting that guy who stole your motorcycle. I would have been like, well, you know, he kind of asked for it. stealing
Taking food
someone's-
off your kids' plate.
Jesus.
No.
It was a 1911, but yeah.
All right, yeah, you were about to
That year
pump
keeps
the-
coming up.
You use the word abuse, and then there's the word molest and molestation, and even prostitution. If you look up the old in like 1910,
Molest
the
seems
definition of
bother.
prostitution just meant trading your services for an hourly wage. It had nothing to do with sex. It just meant it was a form of how you, instead of on a salary
Mhm.
or an apprentice or a journeyman, you were a prostitute. And so, like again, molest. You can say that in Spanish, molestar just means to bother somebody.
Mhm.
But again, versus like
Not to
the
molest
ultimate like sin of, you know,
Really bugging
violating the
somebody.
trust of the community and
Sexually
village that
abusing
raised you.
somebody.
I mean, even the word fornicate comes from I'm covering the camera. It comes from like the word for bridge, just because that's where people would trade their bodies for money or whatever. So it's words are
I didn't
just
know that.
I don't know. Words are just tools. We agree on
Words are
common
magic.
meanings
They're
or
more than
whatever.
tools. They're magic tools, if anything.
And
Yeah,
the
that's how you
crossroad-
shape a
crossroads
civilization.
In French,
But
it's
it's
called
most-
the carrefour, and it was a place where people would be put in stocks and put on display in public humiliation and embarrassment. Because
Yeah.
killing someone's reputation, and if no one will trust that person again, and now they have to walk around as an untouchable in their own community because of something they've done, as you said, that
King's
person
mark.
is now
That's
suffering
funny because
immensely.
we call malls here in Quebec carrefours.
Nice.
Oh, interesting.
And people
There's
definitely
some
trade their
malls
bodies like
called
Quebec
Carrefour.
malls. I've seen it done. This is kind of a segue, I guess. The meteor that's going to destroy at least some
England?
major cities on
Oh,
Earth.
wait, Andreas, 5-second intervention. So he just said
Okay.
it's called the Carfax. And there's actually literally something called the Carfax Report, which is a document from the 1700s about the punishments that were doled out. And it's not the Carfax Report that we see today, but I'm pretty sure the Carfax Report is kind of a reference to that historical term. Sorry, go ahead. I know your
I think
audience
you-
appreciated that. I hope you guys did too.
That's
Go team.
beautiful. I just was wondering because there's this meteor that's going to be like 177-foot diameter asteroid that's headed towards Earth, and they're like, "Oh, it's going to hit in like 2032, and it's now raised from a 2.6 to a 3.1 chance, and everyone should be worried." And I was just curious, Kurt, do you have any feelings about the end of the world and asteroids? Like, how hopeful are you for an asteroid to set things right? You know.
Said things right, wrong. Again, yin yang, positive, negative. It's all relative, I guess.
The New World Order.
It's
happened before.
I think we're all destined to just relive this whole existence over again if that happens. So I don't know. It's just if a meteor hits, it's just like, well, it's kind of like the delay button, you know.
Is there a reset button? Is the meteor? That's a reset button. Load save state, basically.
Isn't that one of
Exactly.
Musk's main
And that's the measuring
drivers?
stick, though, for whether or not someone's been punished enough that you decided not to kill them, as you say, you kind of want them to suffer, And then if, as
Just
you
reset
said,
them.
that they would choose not to relive the life that they had led. Up until the point you started punishing them, they were like, yeah, no. If I had to do it all over again and I couldn't change anything, or even it was a little worse, that'd be fun. But somehow, eventually.
Well, wait, what were you saying, Kurt? Sorry.
It's okay. It's you know the plot of Skyrim. I forget
The dragon.
Yeah, they have to banish the dragon for 5,000 years to like
Yeah.
save the world, and it's like, well, we'll just deal with this problem later. It's because life is worth living. We'll just deal with this problem later. It's well, yeah. That's the whole philosophical.
For man to live. Let man live life. Ba 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 ba.
I hope you're all doing well. That's what I got to say.
I got my money on the aliens vaporizing the asteroid. As long as we play it cool.
Well, they just gotta like get it out of the way. They don't even have to vaporize it. You just alter the trajectory a bit, and that's it.
How weird is it, this idea where
the illegal aliens or the legal ones?
Where I like this.
They're
idea
all illegal in space, you know.
We're supposed to imagine that we're in a world that's surrounded by asteroids and meteors 24 hours a day or more. It's like, what is time and space? And that at one point, it's inevitable that it will destroy us. It's already destroyed us before. We've had resets because of it. Why aren't we having more cities just wiped out by asteroids all the time?
The moon. Look at the moon.
Yeah.
So the moon
It's our bulletproof
vest. It's Jupiter.
Electromagnetic gravity well that
it's pulling things into the moon.
Like the whole thing has had chicken pox for millennia.
Yeah, it's cheese, Swiss cheese for a reason, you know.
Well, why are they saying that they think this is all of a sudden not going to be stopped by the moon? That this is going to be
or Jupiter? Jupiter's the one that sucked up most of the stuff.
Fear mongering for one, like increase panic, increase overall panic all the time. There's a pandemic, there's a meteor, the dinosaurs are coming back. They're going to deport all your family, and there's illegal immigrants coming in at the same time. Everything is just
so what does
fear-mongering.
What does panic get you? What panic gets you? Funds and funding and allocation of
resources. Content.
Panic also gets you programmed, because when you're panicked, you're prone to program.
That are crunching the XYZ data to figure out the trajectory of things in space. They're constantly scanning and then mapping and plan, right? But these are supercomputers that are always chugging on these things to see if the new data updates it, because when you're doing a regressive curve to an algorithm, we're not really sure when it's going to turn. So the doctors were trying to, the WHO, probably the NIH, was using the same supercomputers at a discounted rate from the government to process virus data, to try to, as soon as you got a swab of data, you'd run it through a PCR machine, and then you'd publish the local coronavirus genome. Like they still have the Spanish flu thing, right? But as soon as those networks got jammed and the systems reset in Wuhan, China, one doctor put that thing into the PCR machine that was supposed to tell him whether it was this influenza A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, and instead it said does not compute. And it may have been an actually novel coronavirus, but more likely what happened was its database got wiped because the astrologers and astronomers got hold of the supercomputers so that they could run their calculations on them instead of the doctors running their calculations on them. And that's largely my understanding of the beginning of the pandemic around 2019. And you won't really read that anywhere in any books, but that is the most plausible explanation for how a lot of this shit got started.
I feel like we just have so much predictive programming, and that Netflix made a Leonardo DiCaprio movie about an asteroid hitting the Earth. Is it not? Yeah. Like it just feels
and the
like
relationship
fear-mongering. It's part of the program.
But if you look at the relationship between like the tech genius in that movie and like the president, it mirrors sort of the dynamics that we're watching unfold in the administration right now.
Purely in the context, same for Terminator doesn't mean Terminator will happen exactly or anything. It just means that we are being prepared for these sort of hypothetical scenarios. It's like we're being prepared for novelty itself. There's so much novel stories that like it's preparing us. Going, it might be the Matrix. It might be Ghost in the Shell.
And 1 in a million asteroid doesn't get us. No, humans are the most dangerous thing on Earth to other humans.
All right. So purely in the context of the end of the world, are you guys ready to go? Like, if the world did end and there was nothing you could do to stop it, are you cool with that? Like, if there's nothing you could do, would you?
Hey, at least something's happening.
It depends on like proximity to the epicenter.
Would you be
whatever the
cool with
end
it?
is.
What a question to ask.
I mean, if you know you
No,
can
it's
stop
cool.
it.
You know, like the end of times.
Would you be cool with it?
It's an important question.
Depends. You know,
It's
it all
like
depends.
asking, are you ready to die, Dr. Jones? I'm prepared to die. Are you ready to die? It's like in Fight Club where they're like, if you died right now, what would be your regret? You know, I wanted to paint a house.
Build a house.
Picture. Yeah, build a
Paint
house.
some
Like,
portrait.
What would you want it to say on your tombstone? Is another way to phrase that type of
what if
thinking.
there's no
And
more tombstones because everything goes? That's the thing. I think, are you ready for that? That's an important question. I think that's the way you have to live your life. How many people aren't ready for that? How many people would freak out? Like, okay, like I've been in a plane. I was thinking about this the other day. I was in Bermuda, and all of a sudden it started free falling. We went down like hundreds of feet. People were vomiting. There's nosebleeds. I pulled out a vape because I was like, it's the end of the world. I'm gonna die.
Fuck it.
Yeah. And then like we ended up recorrecting, and everything went back to normal. Everyone just let it go. They're like, yeah, I mean, if I was about to die, I probably would have vaped too. It was no problem, you know.
I'll
No,
light a
like,
cigarette for sure.
You should have
100%.
seen what they
I
did
want a
in
drink.
aisle 4 in row 4 though. They all took off their clothes and did something embarrassing, and then they're like, "Oh
Yeah.
shit, plane's not going down."
Right.
Some people call their loved ones. Some people call the people they hate.
I feel like there's something to it that a lot of people aren't ready to die at all times, and that there's a way to live your life that you're constantly ready to die at all times, even though you'd probably like to keep living. Like I'm a big fan of life.
I don't want to die, you know, but
Yeah.
if there was no choice, I guess like
Yeah,
I'm more
would you be comforted by the idea that everyone has to go? It's like equal opportunity.
That's even better. That's like
democratic.
I see.
So when an
Sure, but what bothers me is vampires.
Yeah, the social
I don't like
security.
immortals.
I don't like vampires using our social security money either.
I don't like the idea that I'm trapped in a reincarnation cycle
Can
while
we
you
talk
have
about
this sort
that
of
for a
like
second, though? Can we
meta
talk about
creature that lives for hundreds of years and controls me over multiple lifetimes. I don't like that shit. So
Yeah,
if
but
that's
what if-
going on,
is it
stop
possible that there are that many people that are that old and that
That's a
they're
good
doing a really good
question.
job of keeping it a secret?
It's a
You guys-
computational
Cobalt?
error.
Just
It-
Cobalt?
It,
Okay.
defaults to 1875 if they don't have all.
No.
the information. They don't
Did
have
you
all
see
that
the
birth
chart that
information.
Elon published where it's broken down by age bracket? There's a whole bunch of people
Yeah,
between
I saw it.
210 and 220, 220, 230, and then it skips from 260 all the way to 360. And apparently there's like one or two people that are supposedly between 360 and 370 years old.
Older
as
than
well.
the United
so
States.
maybe those are real vampires that are hidden and they live.
Occam's razor, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so now here's the
I'd be
thing.
dying
Here's the
to
thing.
know
Here's the thing,
how
guys.
much all
Guys,
those
guys,
people-
guys.
Hey, I'm just saying it's a perfect place for awareness for vampire.
Everybody calm down. Andrew was about to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, nothing special. I was just. I wonder how much all of those people are collecting from Social Security versus how much Elon and his companies are collecting in government contracts.
Yeah, but government contracts are different because we're getting something for those government contracts. It's not like
Are
the
we?
California Railroad.
Supposed to, hypothetically.
No, I mean they're building equipment that's actually being used to replace NASA's equipment, which is all $10,000 toilet rolls. Everything is accounted for. Everything is digital, and you can see where everything is going. And there's no $10,000 toilet rolls. This is like the first contract where everything is transparent like that. You can investigate all of the expenses. If there were some impropriety where someone looked at a SpaceX contract and said, "Wait, why is this happening?" Don't you think that would be the biggest news? Because they're looking so hard to. They're always saying, "Oh, Trump and Elon could be doing this or that," but if they were, wouldn't they be pointing that out like everywhere, left and right?
Here's the two possibilities that exist in my mind. Like Elon isn't read into some things, and he genuinely believes that he can go to Mars and be fucking king of Mars or whatever. Or
He might be that stupid.
Or he knows that you can't get to Mars, and he just decided to craft his own money laundering scheme. That's,
It seems like that's the
parallel
most
to that.
likely thing. I think
It's like
I
the
was-
Wright brothers argument, though. Like, you'll never fly a plane. That's crazy.
The Van Allen radiation belt. NASA lost all
Stick
the
to
telemetry
popcorn.
data. Look, I'm not saying
a better
that the Earth
example,
is flat. I'm
but a
just
better
saying
example is
NASA's
Tesla.
full of shit.
I agree.
Tesla and the AC
That's the
motor.
problem.
Because the Wright brothers were not the first in flight. They were the first in self-powered flight with an internal combustion engine mounted on something made of fabric and wood. Whereas there had been plenty of jet-powered gliders that could go 100 miles with a big
England.
tank
Yeah.
of compressed gas bumping stuff
total
out the back. And the plane and the wings were the same exact design. And all they did, because the Wright brothers worked at their father had a bicycle shop, and so they had all these extra pieces and castings and gears to play with, and eventually figured out how to have something that's small and compact and heavy that uses a really dense fuel source, and then take the rotational energy off of that to make a propeller. And that it was the first propeller plane. That was all they did. Jet planes existed before that, as did.
Yeah, of course there's other flying things throughout history, of course. But like people said it would be impossible for them to do it. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll get to Mars personally, but he might be a stepping stone towards some solutions, if anything. He might be a failure in his lifetime, but a lot of people are. They become relevant later, if at all.
I like Andrew's idea that if you know the lie so well, and then you try to debunk the lie and prove the truth to people, they shut you down. So instead, building into the lie and really, he's saying, "Oh, space is so real. It's the thing I care about the most." Then they're promoting him because he's promoting their lie.
It's almost like going over the top and giving a Nazi salute to the Republican Party to troll the fuck out of the audience, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's doing it genuinely," and because no one is willing to admit that he was. I mean, that was a pretty big insult. If you're in that audience, what the, and you're not of that mentality, you're like, why are you highly? But it's a way of saying, look out. This is one of the most powerful regimes that's existed.
Well, he really has that internet troll mindset. He really does, of just I will piss off people and say the most offensive thing possible, and the shock value. He does have that shock jock aspect, Elon Musk.
What about, have you noticed that the new Grok symbol is the singularity?
It's a swastika.
It's the
Sorry. Yo, Vince, the internet broke you, dude. You're broken.
No, but can I ask Kurt a question though? Just to kind of go back to, again, I had a couple things to touch on about the whole dead and alive thing, but
we'll do it. Let me just point out again though, I pulled this picture up a number of times recently to talk about the black hole. And hey, yeah, Vincent, you just watched Interstellar, and so it's kind of it is the space-time breaking away of time singularity black hole symbol. That is what Grok's logo is now. And I think that's interesting because he is maybe not talking about going to space so much as breaking through space-time. But all right, sorry, go ahead.
So sort of star portals kind of idea.
And did we all watch that TED Talk where there was a woman in her 20s who was explaining how she was in charge of the department at NASA that assembled all the data to take out the first ever photo of a black hole, right? Does anyone, again?
I vaguely remember this video, yeah.
Okay, yeah, not everyone is as big a nerd with an encyclopedic memory like me, but again, to me, that's something that, of course, everyone knows about, right? That was published once in the newspaper. But so there's a woman out there, and she spends 20 minutes explaining how smart she is and how advanced the techniques they're using. But if you understand the way that image was generated, with a bunch of ones and zeros, and again, they just CGI'd it. It's the most fake image at NASA because the very fundamental essence of a black hole is that no light escapes. So there's nothing to take a picture of, my friends.
Yeah.
Well, isn't 90% of NASA images assembled or computer generated? Basically, they're mosaics essentially.
But what's crazy is that we all have to pretend somehow that it's real. It's insane. But we don't know what really is going on. That's why I think it's important to have someone who can destroy that system and be like, yeah, this is the real metaphysics. This is the real outside of Earth instead of.
Well, it's a different type of sports. It's it's an alternative economy, and they do make useful discoveries sometimes. But can I make a comment on the death alive thing that we were saying of the tombstone statements that we had, and the idea of, so if an advanced culture visited a primitive culture, whether you want to call it aliens landing here or us finding, the first question is how do you know someone's dead? And in our culture, an EMT, after someone's done breathing for 4 minutes, triage, you move on. You declare that person legally dead after 4 minutes, they're not breathing and they don't have a heartbeat. Whereas we all know that is well short of, the limits from which someone can be brought back. Now, the next question you ask after is, how do you know someone's dead, is what do you do with your dead? Because they're going to go dig them up and show you the insides of all the coffins, where when people are on Romeo and Juliet style drugs where they kill you for 6 hours and then there's some time release antidote, or some of your organs come back online after you die. And there's fingernail scratches on the inside of a lot of coffins because, again, how do you know they're dead again? And what do you do with your dead? You bury them. Again, that's how you know it's the primitive culture being encountered by the more advanced one, because the advanced one is going, so what do you do with your dead again? And how do you know they're dead? And it's very hard for all of us to understand. This is like C-section versus natural birth. Again, it's a new paradigm. We're a futuristic species that's been designed by ourselves, not just to like look pretty and to be sexually attractive, but we've been here for, I think, 2.4 million years. There's a chance that 150,000 years ago, humans with a lot more hair on our bodies and bigger brains went to the moon and planted trees, and that's why there was a petrified piece of wood on the moon. I mean, 2.4 million years, the idea that we're inventing all this technology now, it just becomes less and less.
Have you seen the thing where they look at the human population and they see how quickly exponentially we grow, and the idea that if you go back a few hundred years, there's such a small population that there might have been basically no one a few thousand years ago. Half of all the people who ever lived the last 2,000 years, right?
Sounds great. Way less people to deal with. That sounds fucking.
Yeah, but when you look at all the geoglyphs, it actually also looks like the entire surface of the Earth was settled by maybe trillions of people. Or again, would you call them people? Some people are calling them creatures if they were bigger and hairier than us. But like, do they have human rights? Again, at some point, human is going to be a very racist term, so to speak, or it's a bigoted term.
I don't know.
So again, all of our pets live shorter lives than us. And Andreas was on stream earlier this week with
Galapagos turtles.
No, but the domestic. So Adam Krigler, the host of Basis Fuck on Mondays, is he lost a cat unexpectedly. That was kind of But anyways, it got me thinking about how there are certain cat breeds that live longer. There are certain cow breeds and horse breeds that live twice as long as other horse breeds. But we are such a monoculture, or at least our education makes us convinced of that. But is it possible that there's a type of human that lives to about 50, 60, and then there's a type of human that might live to about 350 years old?
Yeah, in the Vatican, that's where they're all hidden, and the church knows.
Well, I think it's genetic. I think it's genetic potential that is kept within us that we can eventually unlock. So probably some humans naturally, it would make sense that some would live longer than others based on like their genetic pattern from thousands and thousands of years ago. We lived through radiation levels that we couldn't even like really tolerate now. Like it fluctuated so much. So it could be that we really have some amazing gifts hidden within our genes that maybe we'll tap into someday. We are tapping into now, starting.
And again, how do we know they're dead, and what do you do with them again after that? And again, it's human. It's like an animal rights issue to them because they're encountering an inferior species that, with all the best intentions, because it's possible that what happens again, your brain is made of fat, and your nervous system might begin to kind of shut off from the tips of your fingers and kind of retreat. Your life essence retreats into your spinal column and in your brain. And there may be some sort of metabolic activity where you're in some sort of quasi dream state. And there may be different levels of awareness and feelings when you're in that state. And it may just fade off to nothing. And then once the fat in your brain finally decays and there's no more electrical signals in your brain 100 years after you've been put in the casket, without being cremated or your spinal cord severed, that's when you're really dead. And it's like in, what was it, Princess Bride? Well, he's not like fully dead. He's like mostly dead.
Well, when I die, I would like to be made into a hamburger.
You probably will.
The idea, like my cat, my mom put it to sleep. I was not taking care of my cat at the time. It was my cousin's cat too, and then she had it like turned into ashes. And I'm picturing this in my head. So you're saying that you injected it with drugs that are supposed to kill the cat, which we know, again, a lot of the drugs are like reversible. You injected it with a toxin that killed it like over the course of a few minutes. And then even if it wasn't fully dead yet because it's brain active, you then put it in an incinerator so that if there were any nerve endings that were still connected actually into the brainstem that were still fried, you got to experience being burned to a crisp after you poisoned it. And it's like you just might as well cut the thing's head off, that's a cleaner, honorable death for the animal. Get out.
Yeah, but how much longer are you alive after your head is chopped off? It's you're accomplishing the same thing.
Very
you're
long.
cutting off.
You can freeze it though.
It's possible though that the spinal cord has more to do with receiving. I know our nervous system could emit some DMT-like chemical that.
Kurt, do you think that cats have souls? Do animals have souls?
Absolutely. Yeah, they do. Cats have souls, and yeah. If you're a fan of all the Buddhist doctrine, then every life form has a soul. You can think of some souls as being more complex than others, but yeah, everything down to microorganisms, they have kind of their own soul in a way, but. Yeah, we don't often think of it that way because like we think about layers of consciousness, but I think animals probably have a lot, higher consciousness than our culture likes to give them credit for. But yeah, people love their animals, but I don't think people would love their animals unless they were soulful, joyful beings. They have some sort of spirituality that uplifts our own spirituality, and that's why we love them so much.
And Kurt, can I ask you if you're a religious person or you believe in God, or is that too personal?
No, not too personal. I think that's what these podcasts are for. We're here to talk about things, right?
Well, so sure, in the religious context, like so do you believe in God or
intergender wrestling is real?
Like I guess I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about Dostoevsky, and like I would say maybe my faith is comparable to his. It's like. And
He's not even trying.
I'm not trying to fluff myself. I promise. It's like, yes, I do believe in God, and I mean, like, there's a whole lot of suffering that comes with a belief in God. It's not always just like a great thing.
Well, it's funny. So there was a leading question. There was a two-part. The second part was if you went up to a random atheist, someone who said, no, I definitely don't believe in God. I believe in spirituality, divinity of the universe, of nature, and connection. I believe in that stuff, but I don't think there is any singular God. But then you said, do cats have souls? They would probably say yes. But if you ask that same person in the context of a religious discussion, do humans have souls? They would say, no, nothing immaterial exists. We are but flesh and blood. We are the chemicals and synapses and neurons. And there's nothing that escapes from our body. We're not connected through any ethereal realm or forces or anything. So they would say that about humans to kind of defend their corner of the argument of atheism, especially if they're straw manning or something. But if you ask that same person casually, you walk by them on the street, hey, do cats have souls? They'd probably be like, yeah. But humans are confusing.
Well, what about reincarnation though? Like, do you think that cats become people and back and forth, all that kind of, like, the animals go back and forth? Like,
now wait, can they? Are you asking if scientifically it's possible?
Do you think
brain?
The cats you've known have been persons?
I think it's an in-between state between reincarnations. You get to be this sort of animal based on the life you lived. So if you were a shitty person, you get to live as like a cockroach and have like a life.
You guys all take the foo-foo. I'm talking about practically.
Animal lives are
reincarnation. Reincarnation. Could you get plastic surgery such that you're unrecognizable? And is that a form?
I have two interesting takes on cats. One with the cat. I think cats. The first more practical one is that in Atlantis, in some prior advanced civilization, they were fucking around with gene splicing, which is probably one of the reasons why the gods were like, all right, you guys got to go because, you guys are messing around with things you're not supposed to. And cats are kind of like some byproduct of like ancient genetic manipulation or whatever. Or it could be, there's also this like ancient Egyptian myth that suggests that cats inherited the spirit or souls of dragons, which I like that one, because like cats are kind of weird and like lizard-like, and they have like mystical properties.
Yeah, they can always tell when you're tripping.
Same for dogs.
You try to catch a squirrel or a bird. You walk around your neighborhood and sit somewhere and just wait and have the patience and the focus to get close to where the birds or the squirrels are hanging out, and then have the speed and agility to catch one. Go ahead. I mean, it's like, who's better adapted to survive? I mean, I guess you could throw.
They live on a different scale of time. I think they even perceive. They download visual data at like a different frame rate than we do. So
yeah, they might experience time slower too.
I heard that old wives' tale growing up too. If we all know a piece of information like that, and we've all heard that story, this is the time. It's like revelation, tribulation. No, it's actually probably not true. How would you prove that?
I mean,
if you have a computer, if you have a shitty computer versus a good computer, do they experience downloading data differently, or is it the same rate? You know, like their capacity to contextualize reality is different.
Frequency. They might have different frequency. I think the idea of the cat. I like the story that cats come from the Pleiades. I mean, the Bastet Egyptian mythology is that cats are like divine beings that are watching over you. That like when they pass, it's because they're jumping from one body to another body. I don't know if that means necessarily reincarnate, or if it's even weirder that like cats are straight up like supernatural beings that are using some sort of a body on Earth so they can watch over, be human guardians. I mean, it's a weird idea, but it's an ancient.
And if you're trying to get the nature of the brain of animals that are non-human, take it closer. So a chimpanzee, closer to us on the family tree, so to speak. If you had to guess who has a better short-term memory, here's the test: chimpanzees versus college students at Ohio State. And the test is you're in front of a screen that's a 10 by 10 grid, and all of a sudden 10 of those 100 squares light up, and each one has a number in it. And it lights up for like half a second, right? And then you're supposed to then they disappear, and then the grid comes up, and you're supposed to touch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. College students would get maybe 2 or 3 numbers, maybe some people would get 4 or 5. The chimpanzees, on the other hand, would get 9 out of 10 right, about at least 50% of the time, because their short-term memory and their situational awareness, they have to maintain. They have teeth, and they're stronger than us, so they have to be able to react to avoid conflict But humans are not the smartest primate species when you measure it with very simple tests. And just because we have vocal cords and we have culture that's given us language to, communicate with each other doesn't. So the reincarnate, if you put a chimpanzee brain in a human body, would it be the smartest human on Earth? Maybe.
I think what distinguishes people from chimps is empathy, and our ability to communicate and cooperate with each other. Our ability to organize at scale is the reason why we're able to make technological advancements.
That's just because we're rule followers, right?
Let me also say,
yeah, and who knows? That could have been engineered into our DNA by aliens. Who knows?
Or by ourselves. Even.
Yeah.
Let me just say, totally. Vincent unfortunately has something he's got to take care of, so I just want to make sure you get to have a closing word if you have to jet, Vince.
I guess. I mean, I'll just respond to what you were saying. The idea of the monkey, well, it's more adapted to its environment and its place in the world, but language allows us to do things that animals aren't able to do, which is contextualize time and give each other information on a scale that they're unable to do. And I'm not saying that this makes us better or anything like that, just that within the context of our place in the world, we have a certain role in the ecosystem that is separate from them, and that has
human exceptionalism. Because again,
I'm not saying exceptionalism because I'm saying the chimpanzee is also exceptional in the ecosystem. Yes, no,
I hear what you're saying.
Everything is exceptional. So exceptional, but synergize. That's the goal.
But so the analogy that I've heard as a philosophical, it's like a trolley argument. You put a chimpanzee courtside at an NBA game, and it might be able to watch and even follow the ball like a ping pong, or maybe even understand the game a little bit, but it's not going to understand that the arena it's in was built by a team of architects sitting in an office, and then the resources were dug out of the ground and everything was assembled. But is that even true, though? Because if you just took someone out of the jungle and put them in that same seat as that chimpanzee, they also have 0 reference points. And even baboons, it's something that it's like, one article was published about it one time, so now everyone knows about it. And that might be true that baboons can type in English now. Elon proved with a tube with a little sugary treat and Neuralink, he was able to get baboons to type their so not only are they thinking, but they're thinking in English, and they can express their thoughts not just by pointing to symbols, but by spelling the words phonetically. And so then if you give that species the opportunity to develop culture for 5,000 years, is the culture? I mean, it would be more sophisticated than ours. But sorry, I mean,
possible. I don't know. It could be that the animals that we're domesticating are developing, like their brains are getting increasingly smart as time passes, and so it could be that eventually we'll see actual talking dogs, like in the cartoons and stuff. Like it could be.
Like idiocracy, getting nerfed psychologically might mean you reproduce more, right? You have a football player who
There's a sci-fi series called.
All right, I'm out of here, guys. Have a great one. I love
Vince,
you all.
awesome.
God bless you.
Later, Vince. Love you, man.
There's a base.
Sorry for
book
being
series.
such a ninny and nitpicking all your words, but
No,
thank
it's
you
good
for
to nitpick.
responding.
Sundivers, the first of David Brin's Uplift series. I highly recommend the Uplift series. It's a book series about humans end up uplifting dolphins and monkeys. You know, like you want monkeys to fly your planes, you want dolphins to work in your military and your navy. And so eventually we make deals essentially where these animals are becoming uplifted. And it turns out in space, in the sci-fi world that this is created in, that every alien race uplifts another alien race. And that's the deal. It's like, we'll turn you into humanoid species and you have to be our slaves for 50,000 years. And that's what aliens are doing. And there's some progenitor species. And it's a good enough deal because after 50,000 years, you get to have your own planet and be in charge.
Would it cost you just your voice? Sorry, this isn't the Little Mermaid.
It's a little like Little Mermaid crossed with like British colonialism. You know, this idea that you'll become a British state eventually once you're on our level. The only difference is in this series, they go to Earth and the aliens are all used to everyone having an uplifted progenitor, and no one knows the human progenitor. And so they wonder, did humans have some sort of an uplifting race that just abandoned them, which is super weird? Or did humans literally just sort of like uplift themselves, which is just no one can see how that's possible. So it becomes this really weird. And the only reason that they can't take over humanity, even though humanity is lesser than them, they have higher technology, is they have contracts and treaties that anyone who's ever uplifted before is treated like an equal sovereign. And so since humans have uplifted monkeys and dolphins, they can't conquer and uplift humans any more than they already are, right?
But the uplifting could theoretically occur from an advanced alien species that isn't like mycelium, for example. You know, mushroom spores from space that weren't from here allowed us to tap into some sort of informational network because there was some cross compatibility with a protein or whatever, and we could have been uplifted in that way. You know, it's I mean, there is also, you know, yeah, it's easy to think because we have things like zoos and stuff like that. Oh, you know, whose zoo are we in?
And they may be so intelligent that we will never know, and they'll never tell.
We're in that baby's zoo for sure. The baby's.
But you can tell you've reached the edge of the simulation when instead of being circumpunked as a white person in Africa because the local people are protecting you from the people that they heard are wanting to eat and or kill white people. And so again, as soon as you're surrounded by a bunch of Denisovians and Sasquatches and you go knock on the house next door because you think you're in a simulation, and you're like, no, I'm in a neighborhood. It's been and everyone that answers the door looks like, you know, Chewbacca. And they're going, aha, look, the human's here. And like, you know, the human's fine. You won't hurt it. Or it's like, he'll get into
Speaking of which, did you hear that in Mozambique they're killing
bald men? The prisons don't work. They send you to Sasquatch land. Yeah.
In Mozambique, they're killing bald men, and police are warning bald men to be careful because there's a new belief that bald men's heads are filled with gold.
Holy shit!
Yeah, I mean,
you know, cum tastes like chocolate too.
It's funny up until someone tries to like pry the
crack
gold.
Their head open, try to get
I think
inside.
it's all funny games until then.
Have you heard that joke?
Yo, honestly, I found out that's why.
Otherwise, cum would taste like chocolate. Sorry.
I found out that's why racists call Asians zipper heads because in Vietnam, the way their skulls open up when you bash them. Yeah,
that's horrible. Oh, man.
So speaking of brains and reincarnation, Andreas, you didn't answer the question. Do you believe in reincarnation? And let me just add one caveat.
Totally.
If reincarnation, just think about it from a purely biological standpoint, it means transplanting the brain from even one cat into another cat or human, and then it maintaining its memory and awareness of itself. And a cat is going to have a difficulty understanding that it's got, you know, there's many ways to skin a cat, as they say, and you literally can. Cats have 2 layers of skin. In an emergency, you could cut off 90% of the outer layer of skin and graft on some other cat. If you had a favorite cat and a bunch of cats you didn't like, you could save that one cat with spare parts from the other one. But from like a human standpoint, is it possible that someone could maintain a narrative and you would ask them questions? This is what Houdini said. Look, if anyone's going to be able to come back, he said, you know, my wife knows certain questions to ask me. And if anyone's ever coming around claiming to be Houdini reincarnated,
well, so
the question is science advanced enough to transplant a brain while it maintains? Isn't that what reincarnation is?
I did live with Houdini's ghost, and I think he's a ghost, not like a little girl. But you know, it could be. Joseph Smith. I'm a big fan of Mormonism, as you know, and he basically talked about reincarnation. His last thing, the King Follett Discourse, he explained that human spirits are all are made of intelligences, and intelligences have always existed, and that intelligences were not created by God, but they were organized by God. They're in the process of being organized. And the mind, or the intelligence, is the accumulation of consciousness of intelligences, which man possesses co-equal and co-eternal with God, right? So to me, this seems like kind of in that lane of reincarnation, but the Hebrew style reincarnation, where there's some sort of an ascension point. If intelligence is eternal and cannot be destroyed, it raises the possibility that it could take multiple mortal experiences, and maybe even beyond that, you have spiritual experiences that become physical experiences.
And as a secularist, I'm open to the whole spirituality and divine connection and unity thing. But what do you mean possessed by God? What does that even mean? And by God, are you talking about the Judeo-Christian God, which is an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, eternal God?
Even that, like, that argument changes, like whether you mean
saying
like
assault weapon. You're just muddying the water.
Are you talking about like divine order itself, or you know, the omega point? I think the omega point of evolution might also be a good description of what you mean when you say a perfectly arranged, organized consciousness of all consciousness and awareness.
But reincarnación, it means re,
I don't think
in, and then carne is meat. So you're just you're replacing your meat body, your meat
bag, yeah. But I don't think that anything is created or destroyed. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. I'm pretty convinced of that. I think that when people talk about AI, you're looking at a machine, and a machine has energy flowing through it, and that energy's always existed. So it stands to reason that that energy was in rats and kids and trees and, you know, people at some point. So if you're looking at your computer, even without the AI, just the energy flowing through it, you're looking at energy that might have been in somebody's grandpa at some point. I think it's just because it's all the same energy.
We all have molecules of water in our body that were in the dinosaurs. Yeah.
Certainly. I think that the egocentric sort of interpretation of the phenomenon of reincarnation is a bit flawed. But as far as like you breaking it down, reincarnation, like meat is a pretty popular vessel for consciousness. So one would stand to reason that if
in this corner of the universe, at least.
Yeah. In our little pocket of space time here. So you know, it would stand to reason that all of the consciousness that there could be would constantly be getting recycled in the various arrangements of meat.
You understand, like, reincarnation is an old term that's been translated through hundreds of languages that don't even exist anymore. And so reincarnation could also be like, right now, you bury something in the ground and it decomposes. And then if you plant stuff on top of that, the chemicals that were in the meat get broken down by microbes and bugs and all this other stuff. And again, if you're explaining this to someone who has no context for understanding the cellular level of things, they're going to say that sounds silly. You know, you put them in the ground and that's where they stay forever. When in reality, you're explaining them, no, our bodies get reincarnated. Even just the molecules that we have are made of stardust and dinosaur poop. You know. So.
Damn, I'm getting like 6 soda envy from American Time Machine right now.
I had to call when you were talking about like you don't understand what you're putting in your body. That's like immediately what I was thinking about. But like, don't drink soda. I can't believe you won't be able to sleep tonight.
Oh yeah, but if it had real cocaine in it, would it be worth it? Because that's how it started, at least.
Speaking of soda pop and death, do you have any like memories of your past lives, Kurt, or like how would you go about thinking about how you've lived before? How do you even process that?
Okay. All right. So
walk with me on this one. All right.
I think Carl Jung and this whole like ancestral memories thing was actually really spot on. And so I think we can get little snippets of that inside the dream world. That's just my hunch. I'm not out here to prove anything. I don't think these conversations are meant to prove things. I'm just talking. So like, if anybody thinks that we need to prove anything, I don't know. I think that's just like a certain sort of like modern fetishism. If you think anybody has to like prove something, like
no, man. Andreas put you on the spot. He expects you to give the right answer and only the right answer. So help you God.
Okay, the right answer is like I think really, honestly, ancient psychedelics, they really do like kind of temporarily unlock a lot of ancestral memories. That's why you see a lot of like faces and stuff when you're on, when you're on the stuff, so like it's weird. The whole experience is still indescribable to like people, and I worry that when we talk about these subjects, there's like a whole subculture that tries to it's like I think a new term should be like made for like psychedelic bragging, like yeah this is awesome. Like it's a lot of people I think are really really misguided when it comes to like talking about things, because it's like, oh, look at me, I'm so enlightened. It really just like reinforces all the like negative aspects of an egocentric culture.
Vince brought that up, this idea that people used to think that the more messed up your life was, the more valuable your perspective was. That used to be very popular in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Interesting. And also enlightenment as the goal, because again, bragging about enlightenment implies that there's something virtuous about it, and that instead of pursuing wealth or power or children, or that what you're pursuing is enlightenment. And it's a kind of a revelation. And
sorry, Kurt, go ahead.
Oh, it's all good. So yeah, we can get little snippets of those. It's hard. I think there's a reason why the schizophrenics used to be the seers of the village. It's like, it's really because some information it can only be like processed with a really really heavy cost to it, and so I think that's why a lot of people that are really useful will be a little bit off in the head, because it's like you can either have all this information or you can have like a healthy, like actual like normal ability to process things that are directly in front of you. You know what I mean? It's like you can't always have the best of both worlds. Maybe sometimes you can strike a balance between that divine knowledge and
for me, it was about managing like bandwidth and RAM or something, because like I'm a little bit dyslexic in the sense that I don't know if I becomes before E except after C or O or U, even though I only speak English and I have a big vocabulary, but spelling is not my strong. Yet when it came to math, everything is correct down to the gnat's ass, to the extent that every 8 you write is 2 circles and not a figure 8, because that sometimes looks like a 6 if you're rushing through it and you're doing everything by hand. And so there's an orthodoxy to certain things that make sense to apply an orthodoxy to, like numbers. And then if you try to apply that same orthodoxy to the way that you spell things, it's there's English especially is a language that's just full of exceptions, and it's not memorizing a rubric for how to manipulate numbers. You're memorizing exact spellings of words. And it's like another analogy. I went to architecture school, and my sense of direction in terms of like driving around the city I grew up was terrible. I remember looking out the back seat and knowing all the different zones in the town, but having no idea what roads connected them. And then going to architecture school, focusing even more on the interior environment and focusing on when someone walks into a space, how do you program it so that they move through it, so that the space and the people using the space are in harmony. And it's letting go of the outside world more and more, not just like from
it's like music.
Like, yeah, and then GPS was happening at the same time. So I was able to kind of get by of never being a great map reader. And I didn't do the Boy Scouts, all these things. And it meant when I went scuba diving and had to navigate underwater at night, I got lost a bunch of times. So it was not fun.
Yo, who's the guy who said architecture is like frozen music? I forgot, but that was a good fucking quote.
Isn't that you, like every other podcast?
And fashion is wearable.
I mentioned it.
Fashion
I mentioned it once.
Wolfgang
I
von
always attribute
Goethe.
that quote to you. So
Goethe said it. Yeah.
Fun fact: you know what? The hand signal underwater for when you're lost is you go, "Who knows where the fuck the boat is?" And they don't teach you that in the book. That's the free.
Everyone says it every time. Well, I mean, ChatGPT suggests that you can do a self-hypnosis to remember past lives. It says, close your eyes, take a deep breath through your nose, breathe deeply, exhale, picture a warm golden light above your head. Then follow a staircase leading downwards 10 steps, 10, 9, deeper, deeper, deeper. 3, in front of you is a beautiful wooden door. The door leads to a memory, perhaps from a past life. You do not need to force anything. Simply allow what is meant to come forward. When you are ready, reach your hand for the door handle. Slowly open the door and step through. What do you see? Look at your feet.
That sounds like activating the autonomic nervous system to induce the placebo effect, which is a real effect of the nervous system healing the biology somehow.
Yeah, that's how you end up thinking you're Cleopatra, probably, because you're like, wow, I'm wearing.
Have you heard of neurogenesis before? I think neurogenesis is the concept of neurons continuing to replicate like all the other cells in our body that are getting replaced every so often. But the paradigm up until the maybe early 2000s was that you reach a certain age and then the brain stops developing, and every time you injure the brain you have one less neuron, and there's neurogenesis is not, you'd have to work with stem cells, or it just doesn't happen. The brain slowly, it's like the number of taste buds you have. They say as you get older you like more foods, but it's because you can taste less and less things. But so what they've found though is that, and maybe genetically it's different, some people even beyond the age of 75 are generating neurons. So even if you have a major traumatic imbalance or disorder, or you begin to have onset of whether it be Parkinson's or dementia or something, neurogenesis is such that 10 years later you might start to all of a sudden just recover, as long as your biology and your other organs are working. That neurogenesis is a very slow process, but we used to think it didn't happen at all. And now they've confirmed that it definitely does happen, and a lot more than we realize. It's like amnesia. As you're saying, you're taking that walk down inside. So is it possible that the trauma of taking the brain out of one body and putting it in another, reincarnation, pretty much is like getting 500 million concussions, and you become a child again, whether you're in a child's body or not. But then 30 years later, you're going, why do I have dreams where I'm a black guy named Chuck? And like, either I'm friggin' crazy, but there are children as well, and they're explaining battles they won as a general. And they were like, yeah. And it's like, I learned because if you put the brain of a small adult into the brain of the body of a large child, because again, people were dying all the time of disease and you did it somehow in a way that didn't cause that trauma of 500,000 million concussions all at once, and you did it slowly, that it would only be a matter of time before that child learned to express itself and get coordinated. It's like learn to use its body again. Like, we're walking around tripping over ourselves all the time.
You might forget, like, in the symbols. So that's the other thing. Like, you might remember things through media that you've seen because you don't have the actual memories. You don't have the actual symbols. So you're latching on to material symbols from this lifetime in order to explain feelings that maybe still exist. I don't know. What do you think about this idea? Like, yeah,
I think if reincarnation is real, I have this weird feeling that in a past life I was Bob Marley. I think that's why I have such a high tolerance for marijuana. I think that's why I'm so good at smoking weed.
Peter Tosh was better. I was Peter Tosh. All right.
Respect, man.
Everything is
gotta give a shout out to Bunny Wailer, and a lot of his albums were really popular. But if you go back to I'm gonna look up the name of this album because I want to make sure to recommend this. And I'm gonna put it on my playlist too. But Bunny Wailer was the third of the. Bob Marley, in theory, had the worst voice. But so it's a form of amnesia that heals over time. And so when people come up to me and say, oh, man, you're kind of an old soul. And instead of just saying thank you as accomplishment, what I do is I launch into that entire spiel I just said about reincarnation and brain transplanting and 500,000 million concussions. And, usually goes over really well.
Or who could you have been reincarnated from? Who were you reincarnated from, Kurt?
I think he was reincarnated from a cat.
It's hard to make singular comments about that, I guess.
It was Cleopatra, wasn't it?
I just don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry.
You never.
Okay. Let's say here's the extrapolation. Here's the fun question. Andreas, if you let me pose a question to each person again. Usually when I do this, no one answers it anyways, but it's a short one. If reincarnation is possible, and what it is, the social healthcare system is sick and tired of taking care of your body when you turn 100. But the deal is you get to get reincarnated into some clone body that was grown in a cow's stomach and had no brain or something, and they bred them like KFC chickens so that they didn't have beef. But so then you get to choose your vehicle for your next life, and it's an adult body. You don't have to go through the slings and arrows of childhood and then having to re-experience who you are you just get to pick a vehicle.
I mean,
like, would you be the hottest stripper in Vegas, you know, and you just rule the town, you know. And as a man, the idea of it's like, does that mean that you're like you see, if you get a child into this conversation and you're trying to groom them, that's not like a fun.
Wait. Okay, Andrew.
Don't. I just didn't want him to go in that direction. He should have stuck with the reincarnating into a tripper thing, and whether that meant you're trans as opposed to like reverse Benjamin Button reincarnating.
I think it is weird. I mean, like I've read some Vedic stuff, and it's really interesting in reincarnation because the other thing is your souls and your friends and your family. They are supposed to often be around each other, and to some extent, so you might end up where like your daughter becomes your mother, or your daughter becomes your father, or something like that. I mean, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm really curious if so I'm under the impression that consciousness isn't bound by linear time. So is reincarnation does reincarnation follow linear time? Are there people who lived thousands of years ago who share the consciousness of someone who died in the future, and does it loop back, you know? Is every breath of the universe just like a little bit different than the last time, and or are you reincarnating into yourself every time, you know? It's
Alpha Victor, I think so. So one answer to the question is I would want you to clone me exactly, and then reimplant me into my own body as an adult, which is interesting, and you wouldn't change anything. Or what was you started out by saying? I should have written it down.
I'm just freestyling here.
Non-linear time, though, if you could be from the future.
Oh yeah, so okay, imagine it's possible to dig up a well-preserved, like, you know, Lenin and Stalin are preserved in this vat of like oxygenated alcohol goo, and there's certain Capuchin monastery or crypts where there's like a young girl with a glass front case from the year like 1700, and they swear she blinks every 3 months. And imagine she's in some oxygenated glue, and they injected the right things into her blood. Where no, you can take her brain out right now and do some sort of like reverse engineering process on it, and then implant that into a dog, a monkey, another human, and that child will be able to tell you its name. So that when you're talking about nonlinear time, yes, that's nonlinear time is possible. If we're going to presume that brain transplants are possible with memories intact. So, because again, I love the direction that you take it, where you're speaking in not aphorisms there's a lovely cadence to it, and there's a nice feeling to it. Whereas, you know, when I talk about things, it's very technical and sharp and edgy and nuanced, and you know, it's because I'm a ninny. But
you ninny. What about speaking of nonlinear time, Trump's going to get rid of time zones. At very least, he wants to get rid of daylight savings time. So daylight savings time is supposed to be like
those are like two different things.
No, they're not. They're not. Because
they're not.
Okay, well, it's daylight savings time only exists because of time zones, and time zones exist only because of railroads, and railroads only exist because of agriculture and bringing property from one place where sun's hitting at one time to another time. So they tried to invent zones for trains to operate, and then they realized that, you know, the light is so different in certain places, but some places refuse to do daylight savings. Right, so you've got places that like Arizona, I think, doesn't do daylight savings, even though states right around it do. So the whole thing with like what time it is,
the Amish don't do it. I think
if you're in this zone, but you're in a daylight savings town, like, I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. And it might have made sense when people were so much more disconnected from the rest of the world and were so grounded in the place that they were. But today, it's like we don't look at the sun, we look at the phone and the internet. It's all one universal time, and it's this sort of world time. I mean, it's weird to think
the
about
sun. You guys only see one sun when you look at the sky. Fuck, I knew I'm glitching.
And the whole thing with the American Samoa and the British Samoa and the Samoan Islands, where it's like 13 to 18 hours difference between 20 miles from one island to the next island, because the time zones hit on the other side of the world at this exact point. So it's like everywhere else it's 1 hour apart, but here right next to each other, the Samoan Islands jump 13-hour time zones. Time zones seem crazy to even try to use anymore. And doesn't it make more sense just to have one unified atomic clock that works off something other than This sun, like the Earth's
Oh,
time.
okay,
You have
Elon.
Earth time?
Yeah, okay, Andreas. Okay, yeah, no, we should all have one unified time that we're all using exactly the same. No, again,
What if we called
it's
it
appealing? Factually and logically, you're correct. But
what if we called it
theory recently that I heard about Tartaria, and I don't know if you heard this. This is the best Tartarian theory, and I'll let Terrace cut because he hasn't talked in a minute. But I want to get back to this. The 1,000-year reign of Christ was to build the simulation of America to be impenetrable to Satan. That even if you try to come at, we are disorganized chaos on purpose, and it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than to be conquerable by the Borg every time the Pharaoh changes seats.
Reset,
and
right?
Eventually everything's illegal.
What were you gonna say, Chris?
I was gonna ask what you guys would want to call this uni time. We could call it Andreas time. We should call it Chris time.
I like it. I like swatch beats.
I mean, that's how you introduce it, right? Everyone has their own that they're following the traditional standard system time, and then it's like, well, what time is it? Is it in Andreas time or whatever? And then they'll tell you like the conversion or whatever. And ideally, you'd want to like gel in this universal time and teach your kids the universal time, and eventually.
But Andreas might know this, and maybe. But is there some sort of X time? Let's call it X time instead of Xirtus time, and that all the time zones are just based on that, anyways. But then, I think
growing up,
there's a lag, you know.
Growing up, I used to listen to the BBC as a kid a lot because it was just like, bounced over to California, and they would always be like, and the time in Greenwich Mean Time is 4 p.m. or whatever it is, and it'd be like it's 12 hours or was it 8 hours different or something like that. But now they have UTC time, which is primarily standard globally time. So we have a UTC time. So you could use UTC instead of GMT, but GMT is what BBC used to use. And the internal atomic time, this is the French atomic time, which is the world's atomic clock time. What I use...
You mentioned swatch time, and then there's the Mayan calendar.
Yeah, what I use is metric time or swatch beats time, because I was sold early on this idea that you could have a metric time. And so it's like 1,000 beats is about 86.4 seconds. And you have, 1,000.
Andreas, were you impressed that I said swatch time? And I want to know if everyone else did. You guys know that Andreas was going to say swatch time? Because if not, you don't listen to him very well. And I don't listen. I interrupt people terribly, and I get people tell me that I don't listen.
He still remembered.
Not only am I listening, I remembered. And as soon as he started typing, swatch time.
And right now the current swatch time is it going to tell me? My God, swatch time is right there.
That's like asking him about graphene. This is like at every party. He usually ends up talking about graphene and
at about 5 p.m.
if Ian's around,
about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it became 0 to 2 beats, right? So that's pretty cool. And so you just have to remember there's 1,000 beats in a day, and there's 100 sections to a beat, and I mean, why not? Why not just switch to swatch beats? This is everywhere in the world right now. It's 3 beats.
So if you're getting evaluated from a psychological standpoint to see about your awareness of, so they ask you who's the president, and then they ask you what day do you know what day it is? And you don't have to get those answers right necessarily in order to avoid being kidnapped in certain situations, so to speak, by the authorities. But the answer to what day of the week it is, imagine you're looking at your phone, and everyone does this, and there's a glitch, and it skips forward 3 days, and it's because the BRICS Union got together with 1 billion people in Africa and decided that the calendar was off a little bit, and the sun's not actually always where it's supposed to be when you want to really think about it. There's places where there's sun dogs and there's 2 suns, right? So if you go to the astrological chart for that day of the year and you plot it, the sun was supposed to be here and it's there. And there's times where it's off 3 degrees this way, 3 degrees that way, and it has to do with the refraction in the atmosphere. That's why there's 2 sun dogs. It's not because suddenly there's 2 suns. It's that the light is arcing through the crystalline firmament, so to speak. But would you want to
have a unified singular time zone for the whole world, or do you like having your own Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, having?
Should we all speak the same language?
Should we all have the same time zone? What do you think, Kurt?
Yes, absolutely. It's like at my last job. All right, so they would schedule you at 8 o'clock, but then they had like a subtext under the schedule that said, "Please show up 5 minutes before your shift. That way you can do X and X and X before you have to do X, Y, and Z." It's like,
wait, you weren't getting paid to drive to work or for your commute?
what I'm trying to say is
no, that's
like,
a legit question. That's a legit.
Oh, okay, I'll answer that question after I make the next point. If that's what you want, then why don't you schedule everyone at 7:55? What is the point of like making a little sub note instead of, you could just save the whole issue and schedule people 5 minutes before when their shift actually starts. And the whole thing was basically, we
Sir,
think
it's because they don't want to pay you
nicer.
for those 5 minutes. That's why if you're
No,
you're
you would
asking
still
for
clock
specific-
in. It didn't make any sense. So like we do things that just make things look a little bit nicer on paper, but they have no functionality to them. So like I think daylight savings is stupid, and I think time zones are kind of stupid too. Like there wouldn't not the sun's up. There would be nothing with sending your kids to school at 1 o'clock in the morning. Theoretically, it's like
the
it
time
makes
zones have
no
nothing to do with the
actual
5
difference.
minutes that they were scamming out of you, and you have to negotiate for getting paid.
He was
for your
clocked
commute.
in. He was clocked in.
It kind of makes sense though to me, because you're living in your own town. I hate time zones, but I'm just saying I can see why people use them, and I wonder what would happen to the world consciousness. Again, there's 26 hours difference between this 20-mile zone right here. It's 26 hours different. So some parts of the world it's yesterday, and some parts of the world it's tomorrow. I mean, it's just such a huge difference that, and it's right where the military, the U.S. Navy has all of its bases and everything right there. Is that weird, anomalous 26-hour difference in time. And I wonder, like, what do you think it would do to human consciousness if we had a universal timeline? Because right now it's like the sun is the day and the lack of sun is the night, and we just think that way. But if we became world time, it wouldn't be based on that anymore. It would be based on our own history or something, right?
But
so like right now, it's, sorry to interrupt, but it is also February in South America, in the Southern Hemisphere. We already kind of have that. It's just it's summertime. It's summertime and it's February down south. So we're already on the same page in one dimension. It doesn't seem radical to think world time would be an incredible bad thing when we already have that going for us. Sorry.
But the Earth is not a black hole and is not a singularity. And just a quick point I'm making is that
I don't know that.
The question is does time travel at the speed of light? So let's say you decide
light speed changes.
It is now. It is one now. And then you have to send out a signal so that everyone else can sync up with you. And even if everyone is on the same system with no latency, you're now limited by the speed of light unless you're using quantum.
Light speed is not a constant, though. We can't pretend that light speed is the same as the speed of light.
And so that's what I'm saying. But outside of it, it's the fastest that electromagnetic radiation can travel. Is whatever signal you're using to send your signal about how you know what time it is. Just think about this as a computer network. You have something that decides it's now, like in Spaceballs, and then the question that comes out of this, because again, I could talk myself in circles, but does time then is it okay? Not does it travel at the speed of light? Is it limited by the speed of light? If we're going to say that quantum entanglement isn't an effective way to do it possible,
time is based on the sun, and like a lot of things are based on light, and so it
currently it's limited by the speed of light. But if we figure out how to send quantum entangled signals over distances faster than the speed of light in a consistent basis, where we can transmit data that way, then in fact we've, as a species now, kind of,
it might be why we need to get rid of time zone.
Increase the speed of time to we not to any specific number, but we've raised its speed limit up above the speed of light. Is that interesting?
So, right? So like hitting a singularity might be. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I don't care if we have time zones or not, as long as my higher power still has a way to communicate with me through the clock when I'm having these really profound thoughts or feelings, and I look at the clock and it's like a number that's symmetrical or something else that has significance to me.
444 all the time, yeah.
Yeah, angel numbers. Am I still going to get my angel numbers? That's what I want to know.
And if you get them, do they make you feel good though? In the way that there's certain albums that I go, if I ever reach a point in my life where I can't have fun singing this song, and whether the song makes me cry or then I'm away from myself somehow. Who's a person who enjoys? It's like my art therapy or something, but. That's because I don't do music professionally, and so I lean into it that way. But I could see how musicians, it's like Freebird again, Like, really?
Well,
What do you guys?
So we all play music here.
I
I'm
don't.
sure.
I wish I would. I wish I were cool like you guys.
Well, I'm sure that. Well, I was just going to get into flow state and how sometimes you could be playing or jamming or even writing something, and well, I guess writing kind of defeats the purpose of the point that I'm trying to make. But anyways, you're in this state. You're just feeling the vibes. I really hate to say that, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And something, you just make some magic. You're either by yourself or you're with a few other people, but you're not recording it. You didn't capture it. And
it's like imagine playing basketball and hitting a 3-pointer and everyone going, "Oh yeah, like game-winning shot, you're the man." But then like when you're playing music, you get that feeling over and over again. And someone's like, "Damn, what a riff!" Or it's like, "Oh, what an improv!" Or it's like, "Oh, way to just stay in beat," and right. And you're constantly kind of recognizing the excellence of and just responding to it. Well, you're processing the sound, and then somehow, to me, again, even singing and playing an instrument at the same time that's the next level stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's does recording something. I mean, if you've ever recorded music, I mean, it's a lot more difficult to capture that same feeling that you get like in a magical jam. It's so much more challenging to reproduce that.
Would it be
recording.
the same if you were jamming with AI though? If you knew it was a computer and you knew it wasn't other humans, and you're like a tree falling in the woods with no one to hear it, or is it a lot cooler when you're at a party and not only is the music good and that you're playing well together and it's a night and again it just goes on and on and on. You're seeing the circle, I'm sure, of but then there's other people there that are appreciating the music too and getting to benefit from being in a space where you're allowed to make that much noise.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to remember what my point was, but it was something about like the difference between does recording something and being able to reproduce it.
Well, in the symphony of music that
hold on, let him finish. What are you saying, Andrew? Sorry.
It's fine. It wasn't that important. The clock changed to different numbers. It's not special anymore.
I was going to say you were talking kind of about the symphony of music that is an output and how there's this natural dynamic to it, and that it's like your happy thoughts, or it's like each time that happens, it's reinforcing good feelings.
Positive feedback loop. Yep.
I think a good analogy for it is like when you put a song together, it is structured. You are essentially putting like this kind of etheric structure together. And when you jam, you're still building structure, except it's more liquid. You know how like we said before, like architecture is just frozen music. Well, maybe the opposite is true. Maybe music is like liquid architecture. And the more of that live element you have, like when you're just jamming with your buds and like there's a drum set there and you could hold the beat, and the bassist comes in and like plays a note, and then the guitarist comes in with a riff or something in the same key. That's basically creating a structure, but it's more liquid. Whereas if
everybody knows that drummer, if you have your B drummer there or your C or D drummer there, and someone's like, "Look, I'm going to put down the guitar. Whoever this is playing the drum, like it's great, but it's only getting us so high, so to speak."
Yeah, and if you're making music behind like technology, like a computer, like a DAW or something, I think it's like the same thing, except the music, the liquid is a little more solid. It's like building igloos instead of like liquid structures. You know, that's my analogy for it.
I can see that.
I would get full blown synesthesia episodes if I start playing music. Again, not drugs aside, I would just start. It's like a beautiful mind style. I would just be walking around, and I would be that guy who walked around with dreadlocks, just playing the guitar or a bongo drum all the time, singing at the top of my lungs, writing music, singing songs of yes. And, I want to live to like 150. So those guys, gestures don't always really make it in all versions.
So we got plastic straws again. We have space-time disintegrating into a nonlinear swatch beats timeline. We have people maybe living to be 150 more commonly and openly now, right? So what do you think is going to be the craziest cultural zeitgeist transformation that we see in the next 10 years or so?
Well, eugenics will become acceptable, but not in the name of looking a certain way or having certain attributes. It's to create a human that will live to 200 consistently. And it's a long-term study. It's the longest study that'll ever be done. And who knows how you keep track of something like that and have any integrity to the process. But instead of us all just trying to outlive each other, out-reproduce each other, we agree that there is one version of the breeding experiment that's worthwhile, and it's to try to create. Imagine like just how much better we take care of our teeth and our body, and your whole frame of reference changes as soon as you can live to 200 years old without even like a lot of modern medicine. like the rush of going from childhood to adolescent to teenager to young adult. Again, it's just like a whirlwind of nonsense, you know. And it's like, I think that period of time in particular, you would be listening to your elders. There'd be so many more old people to teach you how to be a human that lived to 200. And you know, well, burn out bright. But the symphony of conversation I love as much as music, and it often starts as a cacophony and shifting back and forth between discordant notes and interrupting each other and even disagreeing with each other, as long as, you know, there's an opportunity to resolve any, you know, bad blood or feelings or
jazz, don't you? All right, Vega, what do you think is the biggest transformation that's going to happen in the next 10 years in terms of the cultural zeitgeist?
I really hope that consciousness sort of expands in our relationship with each other, and our relationship with consciousness expands when we are finally allowed to know that when the zookeepers reveal themselves, essentially. And I'm hoping that it's the nice ones. I don't know. There's so many different material forces at play. So many but I just hope that humanity. I think the biggest cultural zeitgeist is, and the change for good is going to come from humanity coming to a common understanding that we're not alone on this planet, even as like a higher level of consciousnness.
Ooh, that'd be. You're saying, what if there are lizard people?
They're almost certainly
not just that.
A lot of other and other primate species, and they live on or in bunkers or houseboats, these massive complexes, and there are thousands, if not millions, of Sasquatch or lizard
underwater people. Interdimensional AI, what have you, whichever ones.
And crossing,
and even if we can't communicate, they have sports, they have rituals. They're clearly somehow
some kind of first contact, right? What do you think, Chris? What do you think is going to be the biggest change in the next 10 years in terms of the way culture is shifting and everything, you know, singularity, space travel, UFOs, disclosure, any of that stuff? Or what do you think is the biggest change coming?
I mean, I hope that people start to figure out that you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. Meaning, you know, when it comes, it's good to like pay attention to what's going on in the world with like politics and like first contact, disclosure. But at the end of the day, like none of us really can control what happens to us. We can only control how we respond to things. So to do that, you have to find like alignment, you know, in mind, body, and soul. And that's what really people are waking up to, right? It's like just mind and body. That's easy. Science can real easily like account for those things, but the soul is what, you know, after post-industrial era, like that's what modern society really is completely ignorant to. We're all just kind of like, you know, now with the whole like stuff with new age movements and consciousness, evolution and all that stuff, it's really just concerning, like, I guess, digging up things that we lost at one point. You know, that's the level we're at. And if we could get that back and align it with our modern accomplishments, our modern perspectives and all that stuff, that's probably what we're supposed to do, right? I mean, even like with the alien stuff, that's what they're kind of pointing at. They're like, yo, you're supposed to, you know, align your shit, you know, like live with gratitude. That's what I do. And things have just been fucking working out way better. And that's what the alien stuff led me to. They were like, yeah, raise your consciousness. How do you do that? Well, align yourself in mind, body, soul. And it's like, that sounds like some hippie shit. Well, yeah, but it's real. And it is fucking real. So
and aligning yourself with yourself away from that concept of control. That was a paradigm I didn't hear until maybe my mid-20s, was understanding everything instead of through the Freudian filter of your relationship with your mother. It's like, no.
Yeah, thinking of something as else or other or alien is probably the first step, is to break and to stop doing that. Maybe to look at it as something that's alien is already separating you and keeping a distance.
But there's the yin and the yang, and there's your upbringing and then who you become. And if you have from the time you're a child, this idea that now you have to let go of trying to be in control, you can become very manipulable. You become a rule follower. Potentially a joiner as opposed to an independent or a leader. But then what ends up happening, so there was a time when I was studying in college and like someone threw up their hands and literally went, no, it's out of my hands. It's like, we've been studying for 14 hours straight. The test is tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm going to bed. And it's not that you say, as soon as you realize you have 400 pages of content to study and all these formulas to memorize, and you can't bring in a cheat sheet and you have to practice these tests, in that you have 40 hours of work to do to prepare for this, so you're not wasting all of your time and money. And so then you either right away say, it's out of my hands. I'm not really going to know that I'm going to be able to accomplish this, so I may not set out? Or do you study as hard as you can, and then you're just realistic, and at the last minute, you don't stay up all night. You say, look, even if there's something I haven't covered or that I know I need to study again, at some point you need to get at least some sleep so that you can wake up and perform on the test. Because the first thing that really goes is your random access short-term memory. And the type of tests that you're taking are timed, and they're designed so that you can't finish them. And you're supposed to have a strategy of going through all the questions without really.
Is that how you do it? You like think that it's like you just keep writing until the test ends? That's brilliant. Kurt, though, what about you? Are you thinking like space time is coming to an end, UFO disclosure is nigh, and like plastic straws? Like, what do you think is the biggest thing that you're hoping will, people changed a lot from the 60s to the 80s. How are they going to change from 2025 to 2040? What's going to happen, bro?
I don't know. There was a lot of hype about the JFK documents, and we still haven't really gotten anything. I'm just saying. Now, honestly, one thing. All right, so politically, I think politics. It's hard to say with words what's going to happen, to be honest. But honestly, like right now, it's very easy for the allure of something to wear off. And so like with the Trump presidency, like 4 years is actually a very short amount of time. So even if, there's a huge base of supporters that's happy with what's going on, it's going to be very short lived. And then we have another 4 years of like, well, who's going to come to power then? It's so I honestly, it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes everyone's sense of, I want to say nihilism. I don't know if people are going to, get over this collective sense of nihilism. It's very hard to say. I think, there's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm speaking, as a culture. That's just why
you think we have a nihilistic culture. I thought we were a Christian nation.
No, we are not a Christian nation. I'm not thinking wishfully. I'm trying to say, when people do a lot of idol worship, and so they latch on to people and see people like Trump as an idol rather than, like a god or Jesus or a creator. It's very weird, and there is. I'm disappointed that people like. People like Elon Musk, they're very polarizing. I don't think they should.
Well, he's a philosopher king, but he's about to become a general king. And there's two types. In the old world, there were the philosopher kings, and then there were the generals that were on the front lines with their men. And that was, if you followed him, that was what it meant.
Wait, let him finish. He's cooking. Let him explain the point.
No, it's all good. Yeah. I think it's just hard to say exactly what's going to happen. I think, our collective sense of nihilism, because, we have such declining birth rates and whatnot, I think a lot of things are going to get worse before they get better, unfortunately. We're talking like a multi-decade thing. I think the next time we're going to feel a collective sense of hope and responsibility, it might take a couple decades to, swing that pendulum around. That's just what I think. I can
when
be
you
totally
say we,
that,
are you speaking on behalf of men or white people or Americans?
No, just in general, American.
You can speak on behalf of me. I'll let you speak on my behalf, dude.
American world
I'm just wondering.
Is changing, and what I was thinking of is like in the 50s, people used to have different values, and you can see the difference between kids today who were raised with computers having instantaneous access to anything, how that's changed the way we look at each other in the world. I mean, globalism, I think, is very much related to interacting with each other. More and more of us have friends all over the world, and this is taken for granted. 100 years ago, you couldn't have instantaneous communication with, homeless people, right? Like it would only been like rich people in trains that have telegrams or something. And now everyone has access. Everyone has a phone in their pocket. People have expectations now they didn't have before. Positive governance, social security, social education, things that you never would have expected to be part of civilization. Now we think of civilization as grooming evolution. I mean, a lot of things have shifted, So
is it enabling the things that we were, because Plato sat like the writings of old where people would write plays where they would have their old philosophers arguing with each other because they were hearing different voices back and forth, and that was the way of manifesting it into. But now, as you're saying, being able to do it in real time is pretty cool.
I think, yeah, like if we get rid of time zones, that might psychologically change things a lot more than we realize. I think psychological borders are enough for people to grow up in psychological borders and think that that's who they are. It's a definition of me. Who am I? Well, I'm not a guy from Africa. You know, who am I? I'm not, a wealthy person. Who am I? I'm not a celebrity in Western intelligentsia or Hollywood. These are like, we define ourselves by what we're unable to be a lot of the time, because then we're like, okay, well, what I can be is this. Like, I actually can play guitar, so I'm gonna be a guitarist, and this is a crazy way to think of your life, because it's more that like you're a spirit having human experience that is expressing yourself through, this particular du jour medium, whatever that might be. And, it's amazing that you grew up in this world where you have a guitar, you have a drum set, but it could have easily been like some Dr. Seuss thing. I don't know. And very soon it'll be that you just create whatever you can realize. It used to be that you worked super hard all summer making nickels and dimes, cleaning the floors, so that you could buy a used guitar, right? And now it's like there's just going to be 3D printers that produce guitars, and anything will be available. And maybe you don't even need a guitar. Maybe you don't have to learn how to play the guitar anymore, because you can just make guitar music with your mind. Things are shifting so fast. It makes me wonder like what it will be like in the cultural zeitgeist, where you can just expect any idea you have to instantaneously be realized, and that simultaneously there's people doing it that have already done it, and the past is happening right now. That seems like a psychological concept, but we're so used to watching reruns. Maybe that's why we're able to accept nonlinear time, because while you're watching a rerun, you're seeing something happen live in the past. Who knows how much further just experiencing simulations of truth will lead us to be able to perceive actual reality beyond our perspectives.
I think it enhances it for sure, because it's like watching plays, and it prepares you emotionally for certain situations. By watching Rick and Morty, we're preparing just in case reincarnation is real and we skip time and we get put in a stasis pod for 500 years.
Yeah, get in the pod.
I think,
get in the pod. That's the new tagline.
If we ask this question to Grok, this will break AI though, because the question you're asking is totally legit. And the simplest solution the human mind comes up with is, of course, there should be one time. And how the heck do things work without it? And again, unless it's decentralized on purpose, but maybe you could get the AI program to freeze. If you ask the AI the question of how do you know what time it really is? And what speed does time travel currently? And here's the question is, if the speed of time changes, does that change laws of physics? Because again, if we figure out quantum entanglement and learn how to encode data that way, then we've changed the speed of time functionally.
Time is related to light, and like we decided, light is not a constant, so it's not breaking the laws of physics. It's actually just nuancing them. But David says, hi. Hey,
but
hi.
The question on top of that though is are you really?
I'm gonna really quickly read this. Hey, hi, all of you guys and gals. I just woke up from my coma in 1984. How's the world been doing? Any changes since 1984? And then before running away says, David, go back to sleep. I just thought that was cute. Sorry. All right, Stefan, go ahead. We're going to
since 1984. No, they've been following the instruction manual since then. That's a good response to that joke, right? Yeah, nice. Terrace got the joke. Boom.
Let's do a wrap up.
So I was saying there's the paradigm with time is the time traveling fast enough? And I'm not talking about, again, is it progressing? Is the signal being transmitted as sufficient speed? Or is it a problem where you're trying to get everyone in a perfect sync? And is there a reason for that? Or does every computer need to be able to lie to itself with a double think thing and say, it is what time I think it is? I'm going to breathe in through my nose and out through, because otherwise the computer might have a meltdown, and the silicon microchip version of a nervous breakdown if it really tries to understand the fact that it'll never know what time it is, and that humans might change the speed of time according to its definition of time, which is simply the speed at which that signal that you're trying to get everything synced. But if the computer AI mind lets go of the idea that it needs to be on the same page about time as everything else, unless it's a physics engine or, yeah. And maybe that's how you convince AI programs not to become physics engines, because that's why video companies get taken over by the government, is because you're not really supposed to build those kind of things, because ballistics are a lot easier to
war requires
figure out.
Alpha Victor, Andrew Vega, what do you got?
I'm just going to close with this serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Amen. So Vega talked about the zookeepers and if they will reveal themselves.
The zookeepers.
Remember that was because there was the second round for the. But so this is just a pop culture reference. Is the beginning of the Sonic movie? I think it's Sonic 2. Jim Carrey is in a mushroom land where he's trying to drink much, and then he baits the Anunnaki offside. So in football is when you start a play and the defense jumps the line. So the Anunnaki show up through a portal, and he set himself down to make it look like he's passed out on mushrooms, and they're coming to rescue him again. You know, it's like, oh, well, you know, Unit B-55 is malfunctioning, and they come down like these giant lizard people with their staffs, the Anunnaki. But he's got a bunch of pull wires tripped, and like, you know, he like knocks off the first one, and then the second, and then he jumps through their portal. And so
we need to watch more Sonic the Hedgehog. I agree. Wait, and then right before Chris can close, but Kurt, final thoughts for the evening here.
Hey everyone, go listen to my music. It's really good, or it's really bad. I don't know. Yeah, you get it's study music. It's about an hour and 15 just released. Go check it out. Not that one, Andreas. That's old. Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, you could listen to it in order, and it's thematic. And
you want me to share your YouTube link, because I have the YouTube link of your new album, or is that still private until it's up?
Oh, it's public, so you can share it. That one's public, I know. So yeah, you can share that if you want. But yeah, it's thematic. So if you get through the rough part, the first few songs, it's like a setup, and then but I think there's really good standalone substance in the middle. That's the hard part. If you're trying to like try to do conceptual stuff, it's like you are kind of limited when you're sticking to the concept, but it's supposed to be worth the wait. Whatever. I don't know. Hope it's good.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, you can only listen in order if you have Spotify Premium. It really breaks my heart.
No, you can listen to it on YouTube.
YouTube, yes, but on Spotify they nerfed it, and I hate it, and it sucks.
Yeah, Spotify ridiculous. Stop supporting them. Just get Suno and start making your own AI music, or like listen to Kurt. But buy Kurt's album and listen to it. Okay.
Love your family.
Love your family.
More important. Yeah, love your family. It's an action verb. Love your family. Make some things important. Don't negate the self, but also don't be totally egoistic. It's very tempting to be very egoistic in our culture. Just try not to. It's more fulfilling to love people. There is no deeper sense of joy without some level of suffering. So maybe that's why suffering exists. Maybe, or at least that's what the whole Russian novel thing I'm going through right now is trying to.
What's this our culture stuff? You don't know me. No, I was just kidding.
Okay, and then Chris, let us know.
Fuck. It's a lot to contemplate. I don't really have anything to tell you guys except thank you so much for sitting through this and watching us talk. And thank you guys on the panel, of course. You guys are the best. Thank you, Professor Andreas, for having us on the show. This has been a pleasure.
You guys are all beautiful men. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy your lives. We'll see you next.
long as I'm in this Oval Office.